Want to play chess online or learn how to improve? Join us at the #1 chess destination in the world, chess.com. With hundreds of thousands of people playing at any moment, you'll quickly find a game with someone at your level, whether you're a total beginner or a grandmaster. You can play games at any pace against friends, other members, or one of our many computer personalities. Chess.com makes improving fun and easy. Sharpen your game with tactics puzzles and enhance your strategy with our videos and lessons by top masters. Learn from your own games with Chess.com's easy-to-use analysis tool. Regardless of your skill level, Chess.com has all you need to take your game to the next level. Chess.com is your go-to source for chess news, live coverage of tournaments, events, and everything in between. Experience Chess.com anytime and anywhere, whether you're at home on your computer or on the go with our mobile apps. Signing up is free and easy, so what are you waiting for? Join Chess.com today.
Welcome everyone, this is FIDE Grand Prix 2022 final leg, and we do have tiebreakers here. And I am happy to welcome my co-host, Grandmaster Robert Hess, and I am Woman Grandmaster Katie Tsatsalashvili. Welcome, Robert.
Katie, we had so much excitement yesterday that it feels like it couldn't possibly be topped. But that's the good thing about rapid chess, is that it's always exciting. The time control is quick. The players have to move instantly in some occasions. So, Katie, I'm looking forward to today.
Me too. But let's once again take a look at our two qualifiers at the candidates tournament. Those are Richard Ruppert and Hikaru Nakamura. Those two players going to take the seat from the Grand Prix 2022, and we do have one final seat which will be taken by the rating. And we know, Robert, that Ding Liren has played his fourth game this morning and he won the game, and he is going to play rest of the rated games to get the right to get a seat at candidates tournament. Let's take a quick look at the Crows table and check out all these 16 players and who had good tournament and who had the worst out of all.
Well, Amin Tabatabai, probably the most startling performance out of everybody. He was the lowest rated player in the entire event, yet he wins Group D. And Vincent Keymer, he wins that final round game against Lenier Dominguez, a huge upset and one that Vincent has worked very hard for. Katie, of course, while we have our two tie breaks between Mamedyarov and Keymer and Wesley So and Sam Shanklin, the storyline is all about Hikaru Nakamura winning, Levon Aronian losing, thus Hikaru guaranteed a spot in the candidates.
And the answer is yes. Here we have all the finalists right now. We don't know yet who will be the highest rated player there. We don't know it for sure, but we have some suspicions. We have some thoughts about it, but we do have here these players, some of them already working at the candidates tournament, and they are having some trainings. Robert, I saw some photo that Alireza Farouja shared on Twitter that he is some trip and he has some trainings.
Yeah, no, the players are already well into their training for the candidates tournament, months and months of preparation. For somebody like Jan Nepomniachtchi, he knew as soon as he lost the World Championship match, he'd be back for Jan Krzysztof Duda, at the World Cup in last summer. So some players have been working on their chess for a long time, and Alireza, he deserves a vacation, but it's not really so much of a pure vacation as he'll be doing chess as well.
That's right. Coming back to the Grand Prix, we do have here tie breaks, and let's take a look at the format. Robert, we do have two rapid games at the beginning, which means that the player is going to have 15 minutes plus 10 seconds. And if we have a tie, then we're going to have two blitz games, 3+2. In case if this ends also in a draw, then we're going to have an Armageddon. Can you please tell us what is exactly Armageddon?
Armageddon is fun. That's what it is. It sounds scary. Sounds like it's going to be the end of the world, the apocalypse. But no, Armageddon is when the white pieces gets an extra minute on the clock, and the player with the black pieces will have that time deficit. But if the game ends in a draw, the player with the black pieces goes through. So there's a lot of pressure on the player who has the first move advantage to win that game. And It's a really, really fun time control where it's sometimes unclear. On a different day, you'll choose one color versus the other in terms of which you would prefer to have.
That's right, and that's true. Some players have their own favorite sides, and we do know that Dubov and Duda said that they will surely always choose white pieces as they have chance to get some advantage, and they don't really mind the time and the clock. But it's pretty much matters on the conditions what you have at the moment and also your mood. For more information, our viewers can check it out at go.chess.com/FIDE GP 2022. And also, you guys, we still have voting. And now we have just 2 games to vote, but you can still do it. For that, you can go to chess.com/events, navigate through the tournament, select the game, and click vote. Can guess the result, and don't forget that this is gonna end after 10 moves. So that's it. We're going to start the games. They're going to start the games, and we're going to see what's the first moves, Robert, in just about 4 minutes according to the clock. We're going on our first very short break and coming back with the first moves. Welcome back, everyone. This is FIDE Grand Prix 2022, and we do have tiebreakers today and 2 games. The games have been already started, Robert. They are so similar. We thought that they were like copy-paste.
Yeah, the good news is we now see a difference because in the game on the left side, a bishop came to b4 with check, and the knight blocked it. That's the game between Mamedyarov and Vincent Keymer. And then on the right side, it was a Catalan that was accepted on c4, and now the material is equalized. So, Katie, which game of these two should we start with first?
Let's go with Sam Shankland and Wesley So, as they have played already so many moves, and we know this direction where they are. So we can start from the beginning, Robert, or we don't have that much time. I forgot that we have shorter time control.
We still have enough time to see how we got here. And Katie, you are a Catalan player, so I'll let you take the wheel on the explanation, since it seems to be one of your favorite openings.
Yes, so it started with knight f3 and g3. Usually this just transposes, and here there is a bishop e4 main line. Bishop e3 is also possible, but it's just a little bit passive. So why bishop b4? You just want to have d2 square occupied by bishop, and that's not the square for the bishop. Usually knight comes on d2, queen c2, and then white pushes e4 in the center. So in these positions, white is always struggling with this bishop on d2. But instead of this, Wesley So decided to play bishop e7, and he just wanted to go somewhere else from this variation, and he decided to take the pawn on c4. Queen went to c2 or a4, c2, right? Okay. And after e6,
we got
e4. Yeah. If you take queen c4 here, black's idea is to push b5 by the tempo. And when you withdraw your queen back, now black is ready to develop the bishop on b7. And as in many openings, black is struggling with light square bishop here as well. So now we can see how Wesley developed this bishop, and that's kind of fancy way. Bishop d7 and bishop c6. Usually we don't see something like this, that bishop is taking the knight square, because knight usually looks better on c6. But now the idea is that if you play knight e5, black can trade the light square bishop, and black is just fine in that position. And this bishop very often in this line goes to on e4 or d5 and controls these 2 very important squares.
That's right. So everything that Katie said is 100% the case, and knight to d7 played to develop the pieces, but black's look at nothing past the 3rd rank, so that can be a little bit awkward. And as the game continued, we saw h6, the bishop dropped back, and this is a big moment because many people would say, I'm not moving back, I'm taking. But when a side has less space, they want to trade pieces. So taking on f6 frees up more squares for black's remaining pieces. That's why the bishop went to d2. We saw a5, and then we saw bishop to b4, rook e1, trying desperately to get an e4. And Wesley allows e4 because e4 is a big mistake. If you play e4 here, you'll notice that this queen is not defended on d3, and loose pieces drop off. So if your bishop takes c3, if you take with the queen, you lose the pawn e4 directly. If you take with either the pawn or the bishop, there's this wonderful move knight to c5 available for black because of the pin on the d file.
And the e4 pawn is hanging, so white cannot avoid that. So for this reason, Robert, here white played queen to c2, just get rid of this pin, and now e4 is a threat.
e4 is the big idea, and Sam has more time than he started with, but so does Wesley. Both players are following familiar territory, and with this rook on e8, Katie, I'm wondering if black is going to try to play e5 at some point.
Black can try to play e5 maybe now, because after e4 it will be just too late, as white can then push d5, and this bishop is just really trapped there. Robert, in these variations, white can play e4, and seems like white has more space advantage, but it usually is not that much. And now we saw bishop trade. That's a bit surprising.
It's not something we typically like to do, is give the bishop pair, but Katie, this structure, b7 and c6, it makes that bishop on f3 feel not so strong.
That's right. So yeah, e4 is the move that we expect to be played here, but Robert, something really Interesting is happening in the other board. Let's take a quick look at this one too. Look at this. White is starting to play on the king side with h4, and black already started the pawn push on the queen side. I love this position.
Okay, well, we have a day full of Catalans so far. Black is actually up a pawn. So if we go back in this game, just to go through the opening, it was similar to the one we saw earlier, except Keddy, the move bishop b4 check, which you were advocating for, was played. And so Mamedyarov brings the knight to d2, and after d5, goes for the fianchetto, and then develops. And finally, black takes this pawn, so white can't immediately win it back.
Yeah, and also c3 is the move that black is hoping to play, just trade this bishop pawn for another pawn and just walk away with an extra pawn. For this reason, white tries to avoid all this move, and queen c2 has been played. Also, queen can take the pawn on c4 itself.
Yes, and Vince put a5, so the queen could take back on c4, but often black plays this move b6, tries to get at this queen on c4 very quickly. So if you castle, you actually lose this pawn on e2. So that's why instead Mamedyarov went a3. Now when the bishop takes, so the bishop moved back, the knight would happily take the pawn. So the bishop takes, and then b5. So Keddy, it's a very interesting setup here where black keeps the pawn, opens up this diagonal, gives white the two bishops, and it's an imbalance.
I can say it's risky. And Robert, I also saw some crazy situation on the live board, that small boards below my video. And it started with h4 and then g4. This is a Shahriar we want to see every day. With white pieces, with black pieces, g4, g5, that's what he likes to play.
Yeah, if black waits even one turn, g5 rips open the king side. Whenever you make a move like pawn to h6, it creates a hook so that when this pawn gets to g5, you have to open up files in front of your king. That's bad news. So g4, Vincent takes it, and Keddy, it's a 2-pawn lead for Vincent Keymer, yet the engine saying that white is even slightly better. I think that this is really dangerous for black, especially in a rapid game of chess.
It is very dangerous. I'm thinking now a takes b5, c takes b5 is a just bad move, as knight can jump on g5. This is also a very typical idea here in the Catalan when you threaten checkmate on h7, and also rook in the end is hanging. So this is one threat. What we can see now, Shahriar played knight to e5. That's interesting decision.
Yes, because after a takes b5, c takes back is not forced. So black would try to find a different move. Maybe it's pawn to f5 just to stop all of those checkmating ideas in h7. Rook a7 to get off the diagonal also makes sense, because if we see a trade on c6, once this knight eventually comes out here, we can play queen b6, knight takes c6. It feels like black's pieces are coming to life, even though white has gained some of those pawns back. So we see knight e5, Keddy. I think we know what Mamedyarov wants. He wants checkmate. He's saying, I don't mind being down even a third pawn. Take that as well, because after queen takes, knight g4, queen g4, black is actually up 3 full pawns. And yet what white's going to do is put a rook on the g file and go for checkmate.
Oh no, that's a really bad scenario here for Vincent. He obviously doesn't want that to happen. And Robert, I don't know, bishop f3 here, then long castle, rook g1. Is it even possible to stop this attack?
Bishop f3 looks good. Rook g1, giving up a 4th pawn also looks good. And then rook a3 to g3. Bring all the pieces into the attack. We don't need a castle. King is safe in the center.
That's nice. Oh, that's nice. That's very nice. Rook a3 and rook g3, just to get the rook. And white doesn't have too much pieces on the board, just gave away a lot. But those who are remaining on the board, all of them are in attack.
Look at this. Nothing playing for black. None of the pieces are active except the queen, but a queen is easy to attack and kick around and then go for this checkmate. So I think this would be awesome from Mamedyarov's perspective. And now Vincent, he's caught in a moment where he needs to play a move patiently, because you can't just play quickly. You might actually just suffer defeat by getting checkmated, but you don't have that much time. It's a rapid game, so you don't really want to spend 10 minutes on this turn and then be left with just 3 minutes for the rest of the game. There is that increment, Keddy, but it's one of those situations. It's difficult to know how much time to spend.
Yeah, that's right, Robert. And also when you have just little bit worse position, as now seems like Vincent is going to that direction, so it's good to have something for it, like time at least. Then you can play a bit faster and put your opponent in the time pressure. So Robert, here, if not Queen D4, there is also knight E5 move that can be played and trade the knights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then try to develop the pieces. But I know your plan. I know you already showed to us the rook leaves, and then bishop h6.
Oh, just go for checkmate. And your castling also looks very good with the queen in line with the bishop and the rook coming to g1. And it just feels like a huge attack. And there could be a bit of a little Mamedyarov bias. We know that he loves to attack and he's such a vicious attacker. And he went for this for a reason. But I actually believe that particularly in a rapid game of chess, white wins this type of position the majority of the time.
Yeah, that's the best decision to have very good Catalan game and your important game, especially when there's not too much time on the clock. Wow, Vincent is, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I just thought of a question. What if knight takes f2? Because if king takes f2, then queen takes d4 with check, and you lose this knight back. So after knight takes f2, I'm guessing that you don't even take this piece down here, because taking gives black way too much, and then the white king is unsafe.
Yeah, that's right. Now, maybe king f2 should not be played, and just ignore this and play rook to g1.
Actually, they have a nice trap, so and then I can't get out. So maybe we just
go
rook f1 and take it. Well, that's surprising, because I was going for tactics, and this is what happens when you go for sort of cheap tricks, is when your opponent sees what you're aiming for and stops it. Now you're just losing the knight that went there, and all right, you see the eval bar very high because none of black's pieces are developed and white's winning a piece.
Oh no, that's a bad way to end the game. Knight f2 and rook f1. So okay, Robert, Vincent is losing a lot of time. He's down to 10 minutes. This is not a good thing.
No, I don't envy his task. Look at the position, though. It's hard to even find the right thing to do for black. I would consider f5 even to try to get some activity for black's pieces. That will at least be an advanced pawn. If you take on g4, the pawn takes back, the rook gets an open line. It doesn't look ideal, but maybe there's something there.
Yeah, f5 looks very nice. This also cuts the queen from this diagonal. And there is another move, knight f6, just to go back with this knight and try to hold the position. But white has really pleasant attack on the king side, and Vincent has to make a move. He has a lot of moves. There's knight d4, there's knight e5, knight f2, f5, knight f6, and that's the worst scenario when you have no time on the clock. You just need to have one and only move, which you can find, of course.
And I think that Shakhriyar, he just knows how to play against Vincent. Remember their game in the group stage in classical chess, where Vincent ended up for temporarily a piece for a couple pawns, but his king was ripped open. So I think that Mamedyarov understands that in aggressive attacking positions, he's the one with the big edge, and that's his style. So I really don't like the way this game has gone for Mamedyarov. The other game, by the way, Ketty, is like the opposite of this. It's so quiet.
Yeah, it is quiet, Robert. This is the game when you feel like you have something with white, because you can play e4, you have pawn on d4, a4, and a lot of space. But you have to be careful. If you push these pawns too far, then you give up some squares. Like if you push e5, then you give up d5, and you will be under some kind of c5 attack. If you push d5, black will happily trade that pawns on the board. So you have some advantage, but not too much. There is some games, I have seen some games where white started even kingside attack with h4, king g2, and then try to push these things forward. But you have to be a bit careful, because black is just waiting. Black is not passive, it's just waiting there.
It's a very good way of phrasing it, because we see that only one pawn is past black's third rank, and it seems like black has cramped bishops. You stare through the position. This knight dominated by a pawn 3 squares away. But you're right that as soon as white, and look at the waiting move, bishop d6, that bishop has been on a journey. That was on b4 the last time we checked. And if we see how it happened, the bishop went back to d6 after getting attacked by the knight. And then the bishop went to c7 to defend this pawn. And then now the knight went to c3, the bishop goes back here because maybe the bishop wants to go here. And if white goes e4, black will immediately play e5 and say your bishop on f3, it's not on a great diagonal, you're staring into your own pawn. And if we start trading pieces here, this knight is ready to jump into a square like c4. It's attacking this bishop. And if you play bishop e2, maybe black gets the active dark squared bishop first. And there are some problems in white's position. The e4 pawn could be a target in addition to squares like f2.
That's right, Robert. And here white has per bishop edge, but you don't really feel that for the moment as they are not active. They are just on the second rank and have not any target in black's position. Black is very solid here. And we have e4, e5 already on the board. White decided to jump knight on e2. So if black takes on d4, then knight takes d4, and knight gonna have very nice square on f5. That's really nice square for knight indeed.
Yes, and both knights are going to improve. The knight on d7 and the knight on c3, which couldn't move anywhere because the c6 pawn, this knight really wants to jump into the middle. So I don't think that Wesley is going to take. In fact, he wants Sam to take on e5 so his knight can jump into the position. And there it is, bishop b4. That bishop has moved so many times in this game, Caddy. Remember, this was the quiet game, the more passive position where in the early stages, he went bishop e7, and then his bishop went to b4, and then to d6, and to c7, and then back to d6, and now back to b4, and I've lost count how many times that bishop moved.
That's right. But still, it is quite peaceful position that we cannot say about the other game, which is in progress. And let's bring the bird's eye view and check it out. Look at this, Robert. They have played by the pawns only, at least black has played by the pawns only so far. White has more pieces developed, queen bishops, and now we do have a takes b5. C pawn is pinned. C pawn cannot take it back as bishop on g2 attacks the rook over there. So black is just worse.
Yeah, solved one problem with some activity for black, but then ran into another problem. And we're getting word that the g4. When Mamedyarov played it. We know he loves to play moves like g4, but it was a novelty by him. And Rastislav Wojtaszek played against Vincent Keymer in the Grand Swiss this position, but instead of playing this g4 move, he had chosen knight to e5 against the German teenager. So a novelty prepared by Mamedyarov, and it's a great time for it. g4, and as we get to the live board again, Caddy, queen f6 was the choice of Vincent. I think we know his plan.
You also take the pawn on f2 by the check and then bishop. So white has to guard this. There is possibility to play bishop e3, but that's a bit passive there. It guards f2 and d4 as well, and can hold the position for a while. Is there any other possibilities, Robert, here white can go for?
You're going to laugh, but white still can castle. Like, that's a legal move. I don't know if it's a good move, but you can castle if you want to.
Maybe long side.
You can also castle that way. I'm a little afraid to castle queen side because I feel like it's actually less safe.
Hold on. You're not afraid to castle on the king side.
No.
Queen and the rook is and the pawn is there, and you're afraid to castle on the long side.
Yeah, no, I'm not afraid of castling king side because if you take on h4 over here, I'm just going to take on c6. This pawn is about to go to c7. My king is very safe, and the queen side is where the action is taking place. As if you play g3, that's one pawn, I'll take it. You can't attack me with just your queen by itself.
Okay, got the point. All right, so castle here should be too much, to be honest. But how about, he goes long castle.
Of course he did, because it looks riskier. He's going to go for it. And I do think that this king on c1 is not going to remain particularly safe.
Mm-hmm. There is some ideas, Robert, here to push e5, trade the pawns, and then bring the bishop f5. As you mentioned, this king might not be the safest king. Then can be a4, a3. Then can be if white takes the c6 pawn, then knight a6, knight b4. So yeah, there are some ideas here after long castle.
Yeah, just going after this king on c1. I mean, one of the ideas is, what if I just start pushing my pawn towards your king? It looks pretty interesting. Perhaps Vincent wants to take care of his c6 pawn first, but there is an argument to be made for just sending it. It's a rapid game. Let's go. Throw all our pieces at each other and see what happens.
That's right. And as we can see for now, the kingside attack is stopped for a moment. It's not that there is some pawn going or there's open file, and black's king is safer here than white's king, right?
Yeah, black's king is safer, but black had just no development from many of the pieces. So it's a safer king, lacking development. There's already a pawn, pretty important pawn that's hanging. I think people would wonder, why not queen takes f2? Wasn't that the threat of queen to f6 to win this pawn? And I believe that white can even make a move like queen e4, just defending everything that was under attack. This pawn on c6 is still pinned. A rook is coming to f1, and maybe this queen is about to get trapped. So it's not a good position to have from black's perspective.
Oh, it is not. I'm so curious what will be the next move of Vincent here. Instead of taking on f2, maybe he has to develop his bishop now. Bishop b7, or it's maybe too passive that it pins itself.
I like bishop
e5.
Somehow I like this bishop b7 move. It looks very passive, as you're saying, but e5, it seems like it opens the position up, and there are all these bishops here. So if we trade and you take there, at some point, I'm just going to play bishop c3 and go for your king. I don't know if I take on c4 first, but either way, your king is not going to be happy that the dark square bishop has come alive.
Yeah, and Robert, this is first time what Vincent sees, and it's on the board. He has 4 minutes and 30 seconds. He needs more time to figure out what happens here and what's the plan, what's the ideas. He goes for bishop to d7 and tries to guard c6 pawn in this way. And Robert, if he next plays move like rook a7, maybe he tries to take this pawn by himself.
No, he does, but how much time does it cost? That's the big question. If this one of these rooks gets to g1 and takes on g4, this king might be in trouble. So if we just do a quick little survey over here, bishop e4, rook a7, I could throw in b6 if I want, but what if I just give you this pawn and then take on g4? This this square, this rook coming, this h6 pawn, these queen and bishops. I'm scared. I'm scared.
No, not good. Okay, how about after bishop e4 that black also starts to push the pawn on a4? Who's gonna be the first?
Yeah, then that's a question that I don't have an exact answer to, because I want to just take your pawns. You want to play a3. The d4 pawn is still hanging in some variations. Maybe now actually bishop b4 to stop your pawn and attack your rook. So it seems like with this pin over here, that black is a little bit stuck.
True. Yeah, that's right. Bishop e4 is a very good resource here for white, because if you allow black to play a3, then next is a2, and you can stop this pawn being a queen.
Yeah, that would be a big mistake to allow. So yeah, a4 is something that black is going to keep in mind. And for Mamedyarov, he just needs to increase his attack, and that's why I like the look of bishop e4. It just goes for the queen and the bishop on the same line, but you're just going directly for this pawn. So maybe black will have to think about h5 at some moment, but if this f pawn survives, then once this bishop is out, you play f3 and just break down this pawn structure. You don't care how many pawns you have left. You just want the open files.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, what a tense position here we have in the first game. They're gonna play second game too, but Robert, if one side wins the game, as we have seen some other tiebreakers earlier, then we never seen the turntables. Then they can hold the position and make a draw if they need to. So Vincent should survive here and at least make a draw if he wants to fight back in the second game.
Yeah, no, you don't want to lose the first game of a 2-game match. That would be terrible news for Vincent and his many fans. But right now, he's in a tough spot. Mamedyarov's thinking, so maybe we should check in on the other game between Sam Shanklin and Wesley So. These players, they faced off many, many times. Keddy, it's, again, still a tamer position on that board.
There are too much pieces. Black actually tried to trade some of the pieces, and white is declined that. There was Black started with bishop e4, bishop trade. White declined that, played bishop e3. Then there was some trades, and I saw queen c5 was on the board to trade the queens, and that was also declined by white. And yeah, it seems like that happens because black has not enough space, right?
Yeah, I mean, without the queens, I guess this e4 pawn is a big target, and then squares like b3. Whenever you push a pawn to a4, you can't control the b4 square, which black has taken, and then also this b3 square. So that's why I guess Sam preferred to keep the queens on. But look at this. All of a sudden, black's piece is coming to life, and we just saw a rook trade, and down goes the pawn on e4. So Ketty, an extra pawn for Wesley So, and I'm not seeing the compensation.
Oh, wow. 94. The central pawn is gone. What is Sam's idea here? What he was counting on?
I think he was just getting outplayed. I think in the last bunch of moves, ever since that e5 break started, with that tension in the center, black's pieces came to life, and that e4 move, which we were talking about, it's a pawn that became a target rather than a strength, and now it's gone.
It is gone, and now black gonna move around by the pieces, and yeah, this is the advantage. You don't want to give it up with a white indeed. But there is a pair of bishop. Maybe that's the hope for Sam here in the end game. If they go to the end game, he might have some hopes there.
Yes, that he'll need those bishops to shine because he's down a pawn. Bishop d4 trying to muscle his way on this diagonal. The threat is already bishop takes e4, because then the knight will have to take, and then you lose this g7 pawn, which you cannot afford to do. So this is a big moment here for Wesley, how he's going to deal with the threat of bishop takes e4.
Yeah, that's right. Can he do something like c5 or bishop c5 maybe, just to go for dark square bishop?
Yeah, bishop c5 looks reasonable. I think after bishop c5, though, there's bishop takes e4, and if you take on d4, then the rook takes back and you protect this piece. So it's what happens here? Like knight takes, bishop g7, bishop f2. Whose king is worse? Why? Of course, what does it say at 0.1? It's about equal, because of course it is.
Of course it's equal.
I don't love the look of this from black's perspective, but if the next move is queen c5, maybe you force a queen trade next for black, and then it can't be too bad.
Right. So after d4, we know the threat. Bishop d4, we know the threat. And black has to come up here with some ideas. And before we received him, he goes g6.
Whew. Opening up this diagonal, but the knights protect each other. So bishop e4, now after knight e4, bishop g7 doesn't take a pawn, and now after queen c5, this is losing for white because your knight's under attack. If your knight moves, you lose the bishop. So this would be a forcing sequence that is terrible for white.
Oh, for a moment I thought it was some sort of blunder, g6. But this weakens the king side in long perspective. Now white can survive and there is no tactical motives. Then white can start to go for these pawns, h6 pawn, or just the dark squares.
It's the type of move, Ketty. It's a blunder when I do it. It's a brilliancy when Wesley So does it. Like every time, I know it looks risky, but I think I should move this pawn. Then I get checkmated in 5 moves. So when Wesley does it, the engine says, "Good job, Wesley. This is the only move that kept you with a better position." So G6 is a very, very good choice. With his pieces connected the way they are, it seems like he still has the upper hand. And as long as he can protect his knights, then his other knight is free to move. So I think the queen, it's time to bring that out to e7. That way this knight can then move to g5. And this bishop is very annoying here on d4, but you can always kick it out at the right moment.
Yeah, that's right. c5 is a very good resource here. Robert, we have to check up the other game because something crazy is going on here. Black captured h4 pawn, nothing happens on the king side. White pushed the pawn on b6. And also this rook g1, bishop on e4, as you were suggesting. So let's take a look what is happening.
Rook g1 played, rook a7, getting out of this annoying pin, and then b6 to make sure that black wasn't going to fix the pawn structure. And after rook a6, bishop e4, step 1, the pawn's under attack. Queen takes h4, at least give me a pawn for my troubles. And Chakra's like, have all of my pawns. I don't care. White has 4 pawns, and black has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns. There's only 1 missing. 7 pawns for black, 4 for white, and look at the evaluation. It's sky high. It's saying white's completely winning.
Yep, and we have rook h1 now on the board. Queen is under attack, and very likely we might see some sacrifices on h6 too. Depends where the queen goes. If queen goes on e7, maybe bishop h6 is right away. If queen goes on f6, then maybe rook g1 just to bring another rook.
Yeah, he's going to rook g1, take that pawn, and then there's sacrifice on h6, like you mentioned. Rook can double in the g file. This rook can sit on g6 at any moment. If you ever take this pawn on d4, you open up the c3 square in the diagonal. This is just losing. It has to be losing. I see the engine saying +5. I don't need the engine. Even if the engine said black is better, it's still losing for black. You can't play this with 1 minute on your clock.
That's right. Queen is on e7. Rook has been played quickly on. It was like a pre-move by Jacques, rook to g1. And now Vincent is trying to guard 6th rank. But I feel so bad for the knight on b8. Look at this horrible knight there.
Yeah, that knight needs to be somewhere on the king. Even if the knight's on the king side, I still think you're getting checkmated, or this pawn will go queen if the knight weren't there. But yeah, it's that kind of position. Rook to g1 looks very good because you're already trying to barrel down the g file. I don't think you actually want to take, though. That's one of these situations where people would be quick to take, but then black would get the 2 rooks for the queen and at least have some chances. So I don't know how quickly Mamedyarov wants to play rook g1 and go for this pawn.
That's right, Robert. There can be some ideas like bishop g5 to pin this rook and queen. And if you take h takes g5, then the rook gets on the h8 and we're getting the knight. Oh, not like that, Robert. You don't get the knight then.
You just get checkmate. Yeah, you know, it's
okay, I wanted to get the knight.
you wanted the knight, but you could say good night instead if the bishop was captured. But bishop g5, yeah, you're just going check and take, and that's funny. Yeah, but he goes
rook g1 has been played.
Yeah, he's going to take on g7. With the king being wide open, when you're trying to evaluate the material imbalance, everybody, 2 rooks for a queen, the side that has the safer king is very likely the side that's better, unless there are extra pawns for one side or something like that. But here, rook takes g7 should still be excellent for white because the king on c1 is very safe. The king out on g7 is horrible.
Yeah, that's right. I also think maybe bishop takes a5 can be the move to attack the rook and then get this bishop activated. If rook b5, then bishop c7, bishop e5 to bring another piece in here.
Oh, yeah. That's a great idea. That bishop was the one piece that wasn't fully participating. So bringing it to e5, that looks like, I mean, this bishop on d7 is a big pawn. Oh, it's crushing.
Seconds on the clock for Vincent. 41 second on the clock. He's not having any fun today, at least in this game.
No, he is not. So this is rook takes g7 if he wants it at any moment, just can get the queen off the board for those couple of rooks. And hey, he played rook takes g7, so this is happening. And this position, again, the king wide open means that black is in a world of hurt. And this is what we're seeing. And bishop c7, going for your bishop e5, Ketty, it's done.
You cannot do anything. After bishop e5, there's even bishop h7, queen g6 ideas that queen can also get on the queen side. Wow.
Yeah.
Just want to check what is happening in the other game, if we have something dramatic.
Yeah, we should definitely keep an eye on that one because this game looks clear. So let's whoa, so Sam's knight. How did he get to a5? And the right side, that knight was on f5 before, and somehow now it's on a5. So it ran across the board.
Wow, that's nice. But black is still oh no, black doesn't have any more the extra pawn.
No, somehow Sam was able to steal the extra pawn, and yet the position is even better for black now than it was before. So that's what people like Wesley So do. He's like, okay, keep that pawn, you win the game that way. Wesley's like, no, I don't need my extra pawn. Although the move he just played was apparently, oh, no, it's apparently good. It took a little bit of time gaining the depth on the evaluation there, but black is minus 1.25 even though you're up 0 material.
Yeah, that's right. Now queen e2 is a fantastic move. You trade the queens and rook comes on e2 and attacks b2, f2 pawns at the same time. You can't guard them. And if you keep this queen here on c2, like rook c1 move like that, then bishop can take on f2 with a check. And that's a very important pawn that can be gone.
Exactly, because then g3 is next. So you think, oh, we'll just trade a bunch of pieces. But this pawn on b2 will be lost. And then g3 being a target once that rook gets around here is not going to be fun for white. So we are seeing that the queens are off and the knight. We're seeing this exact variation, Ketty, and it looks like Wesley So with the upper hand here. This pawn c6 is also loose, but too many of white's pawns are in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. King f1 has been played. This attacks the rook, and now Robert Black can even starts to bring knight on the board, like h4, knight h5. Try to set up some checkmate threats.
Oh, that's actually that's a really funny checkmating idea. Yeah, the knight gets to g3. That could just work out. I guess after h4, white will play g4, seeing your plan, and that's why Wesley takes a pawn. Now he's up a pawn, and just can we get that checkmate? How do we do it, Ketty? Like I'm rook f2, king win here, so the rook will come to a2 for sure.
Setting up checkmate. Knight to f4, Robert. We need h4, knight h5, knight f4, knight h3.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, you're right. The knight comes to f4. So that's why he went rook a2 now, because he wants the ability to check with the bishop at some point if needed. But h4, knight h5, and maybe bishop h2 check and knight g3.
Knight g3 and rook e2, yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah. No, it's plus minus too much. So plus a ton from Wesley's perspective, and I don't know how Sam deals with it. Even bishop to c7 to win this pawn seems good enough.
Yeah, that's right. Another game here we have Shahriar Mamedyarov and Vincent Keymer. Now we can see that queen and bishop for 2 rooks. That's too much of material for Shahriar.
That's right. And if black had one more turn, rook g1, rook g2, you win this queen. But it was white's turn, so he just takes the pawn. That means that there's no way to get this queen, and the king on g7 still in trouble. So too much material for white.
Yeah, and these rooks cannot create any danger for the king, as king can hide between the pawns and bishop can always come to rescue the king. And what white can do is just maybe to take on e6 and push the pawns, or you can push right away some of the pawns. Maybe can also be possible.
Yeah, he takes e6 exactly, and then you can use this d pawn. As long as you don't get ladder checkmated, you're going to win this game from Mamedyarov's perspective, and this king can sneak away if you play a move like rook f2, so there will not be a checkmate. And this king on g7, he's trying it though. Please fall for this checkmate. Yeah, and after king b1, rook g2, 2 rooks on the 7th looks scary, but as long as I just defend this pawn, then I don't have an issue. Even the move queen b3, for instance, the trade will result in a winning position for white.
Yeah, that's right. And we can see the other game just in a small board below my video, and we can see that black is having still winning position in there.
So Wesley So and Mamedyarov just
oh, he's going for a checkmate. Look at these bishop eights.
Oh, let's pull that up. I'm going to pull that up on the big screen here, but that was a wonderful sequence. He's going for checkmate, and now after knight g3, the rook has to take, and then black is up in exchange and will win this way. But the last couple of moves, we saw rook takes f7 here, and that was the one last try that Sam has, because if the king takes, bishop c4 is check to the king and check to the rook. So that's why Wesley just moved his king away, and now knight g3 mate is the idea. And okay, it's a clear extra exchange.
Winning.
Yeah, this king can just walk up the board.
Yeah, Robert, the game of Mamedyarov and Keymer, I can see that ended, and Shahriar got the first point in the first game. Keymer is in very bad situation now for the second game. He has to win if he wants to go to the blitz portion of the tiebreaks.
So perfect game there by Mamedyarov. The opening was a resounding success. So he goes up 1-0, and for Vincent, he beat Dominguez yesterday with the white pieces. Now he'll have to do the same against Mamedyarov. But Mamedyarov in the quicker time controls, he doesn't lose very often, especially when he's the higher rated player. So good luck to Vincent. He has a little bit of time to try to bounce back. But Kenny, in this game, Wesley So winning with black. How are you going to beat Wesley when he has the white pieces if you're Sam Shanklin?
Oh yeah, that's a task that Sam has indeed. But Robert, we were talking about this match yesterday. Who is the favorite? And you mentioned that Wesley is favorite, and I was like, now I see why Wesley is favorite, because he can make magic out of equal position, as we saw now in this game.
Wesley So is unbelievable at all chess disciplines, but he won the Fisher Random, the 960 World Championship. He's done extremely well in the Grand Chess Tour over the years. He's won the biggest events in classical chess, rapid and blitz chess. The guy can do it all. And Sam Shanklin is not renowned for his speed chess skills. In fact, he's played matches in St. Louis against Rapport and others where they've been kind of one-sided. So for Shanklin, he's historically is not focused on the faster time controls. And we're seeing it here where in a position that was level on the engine, but the position was dynamic, Wesley was able to outplay him. And so Sam is, he's going to lose this game, and he's going to need a win on demand with the black pieces.
Yeah, that's right. Here, Robert, in this position, white still stays strong as there's a6 pawn on the board, and black has to watch out for this. But there is the pawn on g file, g5, g4, and can even push on g3, and then rook h2 and bishop h7 is a checkmate strat that black can go for.
Yeah, that's oh my gosh, is white like a kind of zugzwang here? Bishop a7 played. If the bishop leaves the f1 h3 diagonal, you could take that pawn. If the knight moves, where can the knight even move to? Like knight, I guess, to c3, but it feels like you're about to run out of moves. Just rook where?
Rook c2, maybe to attack the knight. Rook f2.
Look, he's so precise, because if the bishop goes this way, now rook c2, rook c1, and you are forced to play bishop f1, you lose the bishop. I mean, even in these moments where it's completely winning, Wesley continues to be super precise.
That's right, and he spent just a few seconds to come up with this precise way to end the game. And here we have it. We have a resignation after rook c2. What a start of the tie breaks today. We do have no draws at all, but we have two decisive results. Mamedyarov and Wesley So are taking the lead in the matches.
Wow. And I'm not surprised, because those two are the favorites in their head-to-head matchups against Vincent Keymer and Sam Shanklin. But the way those games went, I mean, from Mamedyarov to uncork that novelty and just throw all of his pieces at Vincent's king and win that game. And then for Wesley, in standard Wesley So fashion, he is just unbelievable at picking his moments to strike, neutralizing the opening edge that white would have hoped to have, and then seeking more. So, Ketty, it's a great start to the day for Shakhriyar and Wesley.
It is indeed. Now we're going to see the matches switch with the colors. They will take the different colors, both players. But before that, they are going to take a short break between the matches. But Robert, earlier you mentioned that Mamedyarov has recorded videos on chess.com, one of the best of his chess games. And we do prepare for our viewers one of those videos, and you guys can take a look at that.
Hello there, chess friends. Today I will show you my games against Kasparov, which we played in Grand Tour in Zagreb. First of all, I want to say, for me, Kasparov is best player for all time. I mean, it's his best. Really, I every time enjoy to watch his games, and his old games, but still very nice, and is very easy to learn from his games. And for this reason, it is for me it was a big pleasure to play against him in normal chess. I mean, I never played against him. I think I am one of the top players who never played against him. But okay, I mean, first time that we play nice two blitz games. Of course, it's not. It's Kasparov is 20 years ago, and now is absolutely different two chess players. But okay, I will show my games which I played with whites against Kasparov. I am white and Garry Kasparov black. D4, D5, C4, take D takes C4, E3, E5. It's absolutely normal moves. I played this line with black and with white also, and I played this line against Aronian with black, and he take bishop c4. I played with black against Aronian, and I played knight c6, knight f3, e4, queen b3, knight h6, knight d2, f5. This position for engine is for white is better position, but normally it's not easy to play for white. And I played against Aronian, and I won with black. And but I played after e5, knight f3. I think it's not very good move. It's better, of course, take bishop c4, because after knight f3, e take d4, bishop c4. Here is black position is absolutely good. I mean, no problem. But here black need to play only one move, bishop b4 check. But Garry Kasparov, he missed to play bishop b4, and he play very bad move, knight f6. Knight f6 move is immediately losing move. But normally black is only move bishop b4 check. Here I can play king f1. It's a very interesting position. His positions near to equal. Just take, and but my king in center. But position is very interesting and equal, and I think is normal position for white. But normal moves here bishop d2, because take. If take e3 here, of course I can take bishop f7. Is a very good move. King e7, take. And here is white is some advantage because it's black king in the center. Maybe I will play knight c3, castle, and king is not very good, and white is still is better. For this reason, it's better not to take e3 pawn and just to play castle, take e3, queen e3, queen e7, and queen c3, and this position is equal. But of course, is bishop b4 here is only one move. If not play bishop b4, his white position is better. And Kasparov, he played knight f6. He played this move absolutely in 1 second. I don't know why, but he played this move very fast. And when I play queen b3, of course he missed his queen b3, because now I attack f7 pawn. F7 pawn is very weak, and here is very important, no bishop b4 check. And if black will play queen d7, I can just play knight e5 to attack f7 pawn. And he play queen e7, I immediately castle. And here he resigned. Garry Kasparov is resigned. Of course, for blitz games is not important to resign immediately, because maybe he can get some chance. But here his white position is really is winning. Is for normal engine is about +3, but for strong engines his position about +5 or +6. Why is winning? I will show you some variation why he's resigned. If play knight c6, I just will take d4 and open e line, and is white is immediately attack, and no knight e5 move because check. If he will take d take e3, I will play very strong move rook e1. Of course, as bishop e3 is also near to win. Rook e1, take, knight e4, take, check. If king d8, bishop g5, bishop b7, knight c3, queen f5, rook d1, and rook d5. You see it's very strong attack because it's rook d7, and if not queen f7, it looks like mate. And here, if he play bishop g5, king d7, immediately I play bishop e3, very strong move, because no bishop c5 move, c6, knight c3, queen b4, just rook d1, king c7, and very strong move, queen c2, and next move is knight d5, and here is absolutely winning position for white. Of course, after queen b3, queen e7, castle, for blitz, of course, he can still play some moves, but position is absolutely losing. And here he's resigned, and here is really position is very bad for black, and I don't see any move how he can play. Okay, I mean, he just missed move, a very important move, queen b3. For this reason, he resigned. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, everyone. This is FIDE Grand Prix 2022, and we do have tie breaks today at the leg third. And Robert, what a start of a day! We had two decisive games, and both of them were interesting. And I do have my favorites. Shahryar played really nicely, and I can't wait to download that game and start to analyze it. So let's bring that game once again and take a look. What was the move that Shahryar offered to Vincent? And it wasn't something new that no one played before.
Yeah, Shahryar Mamedyarov, we just watched his lesson where he showed his smashing victory over Garry Kasparov, but he is known as such a creative player. And in this game, Katie, at first it looked quiet, looked like everything's under control. Then at this point here, Queen c2, a5, he doesn't take this pawn back, and I think that's where this game started to get very interesting.
That's right. Instead of this, he decided to start some kingside attack. And to be honest, Robert, after h4, I was not sure where he was. Oh yeah, he played a bit later, h4, where he was going. This h5, h6, but it takes like a bit longer. And I was like, why he played this h4 move here?
I think he was going for h5, h6, but Vincent, he made the move h6 first. So we already see that the evaluation bar is going up for white. So h6 is a reactive move. You're thinking that this pawn is going to go up, but I wouldn't have played h6 until white played the move h5. It didn't seem necessary. So I believe that Vincent could have developed, maybe he could have even brought his rook to a7 first. That way the rook is no longer on the diagonal. But by playing h6, Ketty, we saw Mamedyarov uncork an awesome novelty.
Oh yeah, g4. I just love this move to see, and this is the kind of moves that we know that Mamedyarov likes to play, and it actually makes sense. He opened up the g file. Now Black responded to take this pawn. If you allow g5, that's not a good story. Then queen h7 comes with a checkmate there. If the h file is open, if you don't open h file, then you're gonna lose the h6 pawn, and you don't want to do that in like 10 moves. So here knight captured the g4 pawn, and now we were talking about a takes b5 and some moves like that, but no, knight d5 has been played.
Yeah, a takes b5 looks so natural because the line that Ketty showed during the game is if black takes back, which you should not do, your rook is loose in the corner, and that opens knight g5, threatening checkmate. And after pawn takes g5, you don't even take the rook. You can't take the rook. You'll be in great shape. But after pawn takes back, you once again threaten this checkmate. And then the bishop takes the rook in the corner. White is up at minimum in exchange with a huge attack.
Yeah, so this was one option, but here Shahriar went for knight e5, and Black had here too much options. We saw the queen d4, queen captures the pawn, knight f2, funny looking move that after rook f2 loses the knight, and there was knight f6 too, and f5, but none of those moves were so tempting from Black. We really did not like any of these moves.
I think objectively, queen takes d4 is probably the move at this point. But how you play this in a rapid game is beyond my comprehension. I mean, the position, it says, oh, it's all right. It looks about even on the evaluation bar. But from a practical perspective, Black is ahead by 3 pawns. And it might even become 4 pawns. But after moves like rook g1, with the idea of either rook a3 to g3 or the simple castle queenside and the pressure down the g file, you could be up 5 pawns. Your king is in huge trouble here. And so that is why Mamedyarov played this variation. He says, I want to attack. It's much more difficult to defend with no time on your clock. But Ketty, this feels like it was the last real chance Vincent had in the game.
Yeah, that's right. But instead of this chance, he went for f5, and he tried to just cover this diagonal and defend the knight, guard the knight on g4, but it didn't work out for him, as we had some traits, and then Shahriar just played normal moves, just decided to play a normal game. After queen f6, the move that attacks the pawn on f2 with a check, he went for the long castle. There was a bit inaccuracy according to the engine, as Black now has some sort of attack on like e4, a3, but it was under the control so far by White. And Robert, I can see the moves in the second game.
Well, the second game is underway. So just to remind everybody, the attack, it was quick. And after the queen was given up for the couple of rooks, it was easily winning for White. Open king will not be able to survive. So let's go to the current games. We have both of them underway, and it's a must-win situation for both Sam and Vincent.
That's right. And Robert, we do have today, once again, D4 first moves. We don't have any E4. What's going on today? They boycott D4, or D4 is more, I don't know, solid, more challenging?
I feel like it's just their styles, you know, they're D4 players through and through, Wesley So in particular. And if we look at the bottom right, Wesley with the white pieces, he is a menace. I just don't know what Sam is going to do, because Sam is a very principled, prepared player. In order to win with Black, you have to sometimes just play random things that are objectively not great. Like I play the hippo in Blitz, but sometimes you need to play a Pierce or a Modern or hippo just to have a position that doesn't have clarity, because at any moment in main lines, White could even force a draw in some situations, and then you're out of it. You need to win.
Yeah, that's right. And oh my God, what is happening? Vincent Keymer and Shahar Mamedyarov already. They haven't started yet. We already have a piece sacrifice.
And this is a known idea, but if we just go through the moves to see how we got there, that once this pawn is captured on c4, white gets the strong center. There is a pin, and b5 is played, defending this pawn on c4, which is under attack. e5 exploits the pin, but after h6, g5, this is the way to deal with this pin, and white sacrifices and wins the piece back. But after knight d7 takes bishop b7, this has been studied for, so many years now. These kind of semi-Slav Botvinnik variations, and white plays h4. It's interesting, Ketty, when you need to make a draw, do you play kind of any old opening, or do you play passively? What kind of player do you think you become when you have a specific result in mind?
If I'm in must-win situation, I will choose something more complicated than passive and well-known, because if it's a well-known line, maybe my opponent knows as well, and the game can end really early. I don't know. What do you think why Vincent chose this line here?
He wants fighting chess. I'm more curious about Mamedyarov, though. Like, he didn't have to enter such a risky variation where these pawns are up the board, the king is in the center. He could have played a quiet variation, but I think it's not his style. And there have been several historical games where somebody just needs a draw, like Mikhail Gorevich is the famous example. And he played the exchange French with the white pieces, and he lost that game. And you think the exchange French, that's as equal as it gets, nothing special there. He wanted to make a draw, but when you play for a result, you're often not playing your true sense of chess. And that's why I think Mamedyarov, he says, let's play actively. I can hold off Vincent in these tactical positions, so let's not just play quietly. That's not my style.
Yeah, he wants to feel his style. He wants to enjoy the game, as he mentioned earlier in some other games, that he's here to play some nice chess. And if this is a sharp position, and we know Shahar is good at sharp positions, then he feels just fine to play this opening.
Right. And right now there's a pressure on the pin knight on f6. This bishop can sit on e7 to defend that. And the material count. Black has 3 minor pieces and 6 pawns, and white has the same. So it was a temporary piece sacrifice on g5, and white was already down a pawn over here. And now white has 1 pawn for a piece, and that's this pawn f6 was captured. So h4, that, Ketty, was a move that's not the main line. g3 is what usually is played, c5 from black. White plays d5 to close the diagonal down. And I don't know the theory. This is as far as I can get you. I know queen b6 is a move. I think knight takes f6 is also an option, but this has been studied very, very deeply and not by me.
Yeah, I know this line is very complicated, but black is just fine in here. h4 was something different. Where the pawn goes, is he going to push this pawn forward, or he just gets this space for maybe rook lead, rook h3, who goes on f3 later to increase the pin and the pressure? Or what do you think? He's not going to castle on the short side for sure. Not in this game. He wants to go all in, and he wants to find some little things that he can push and play on.
Yeah, where is he going? Is he going to castle queenside? Even if you castle queenside, your king isn't totally safe either, because black at some point can strike with these advanced pawns. So it's a queen f3, bishop e7 quickly as the response. That makes sense. And now we'll see how the game continues. But should we... I see it underneath you, Ketty, is the other game between Wesley and Sam, and that one looks very solid.
Yeah, this one is Queen's Gambit declined, and we do have crossbutt structure, and should not be very sharp a game. They're gonna have some maneuvering here or there, and yeah, it's gonna be very peaceful. It's gonna be just very peaceful.
Well, that would be great for Wesley So. A peaceful position, likely to end draw. If it remains that way, that's the result he needs. So the last couple moves were, if we just actually go through from the start, the game relatively quiet to begin with, and Wesley takes. He doesn't want to give what Vincent allowed with knight f3, pawn takes c4 and these crazy lines. He just takes on d5. He simplifies, develops naturally, and I think this is the best strategy possible from Wesley So.
Yeah, it goes quite peaceful here. Not the same approach as Shahrir does, but Wesley, his style, and that's where he feels very comfortable. Oh my God, what is happening in the game? Just below me, look at this, knight on d5.
It's a trade.
Yeah, it's just a trade. I thought it was some sort of sacrifice.
No. The black knight went to d5, and then pieces are getting traded off. But that would be if that was just white playing knight d5 and all the black's pieces are attacking, that would be funny. But in this game, by the way, queen b3 was played by Wesley, which looks terrible because there's a pin, and if you take, you think, oh, I'm going to take back, and my king is open. That doesn't look great. First of all, it's perfectly fine because it's going to be difficult to attack this king, which can always go up to g2, and you don't have pieces getting over to the king side quickly enough. So bishop takes f3 wasn't scary. Instead, Sam went knight a6. If queen takes b7, this knight hops out to b4, and this queen gets trapped. So don't take pawns that may look free. You need to calculate. And so instead, a3 played, and then we're at the live position.
Yeah, this is the live position, what we have here. And Robert, what can be the practical chance here for Black? Like, what plan he can implement in this position to win?
I'm not ignoring you. I'm trying very hard to think of an answer. I love this move, knight e5, because if you take pawn takes and think you're winning a free pawn, rooks on the same diagonal are not good because bishop f4 will skewer those rooks. So how to play for a win from here? I don't know. I actually really like white's position.
Yeah, white's position looks very nice here. The bishop on g4 is hanging as the knight from f6 is pinned. So black has to take care of this bishop right now. And then white can start to play on the king side with f4, can be also f3, 4. So knight on e5 looks really amazing piece. And also in some variations, Robert, if the queen goes somewhere else, back on c2 and attacks on h7 pawn. Oh, this actually is a threat. h7 pawn, you have to react with that. And also bishop a6, knight to c6 can now win material.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, f4 is good enough, but just to show that variation that if this pawn's under attack, you make a move like g6. Now, after bishop a6, pawn takes, knight takes c6. And it's important that the queen wasn't on b3 because after taking back, the queen would have been under fire. So yeah, this would have been, this is something that is on the table. So no move yet from Sam. Taking here does not look very good after pawn takes because you're going to lose an exchange if you take on e5 once more.
Yeah, and also on the other hand, if you don't take e5 pawn, then knight on f6 is pinned and don't want to do that. And bishop on g4 is already hanging. So, what a hard day here for Sam.
Yeah, no, once you lose a game with the white pieces, you're not beating Wesley So with black. I don't care if you're Magnus Carlsen. I don't even care if you're Stockfish 14.1 NNUE. Wesley So with the white pieces is as difficult as they come to take down.
That's right. Let's bring the bird's eye view and check out the other game on the screen as well. And now we can see a lot of pieces have been traded and white pushed pawn on h5. He's really going to promote this pawn, Robert. he's not going to stop.
I like what Vincent's doing. We wondered why he played h4. Was it a rook lift? He said, no, I'm just going to trade pieces. I'm going to play this solidly, bishop e2, and I'm going to rush this pawn up the board. So knight d5 by Mamedyarov, and we saw on the smaller board this trade. So black fixes the pawn structure, but that's a bad bishop. That bishop is not in the game, at least not yet. So h5 is played. It's defended all the times it needs to. So I prefer white's position for sure. The better bishop, even though the bishop on e2 is not doing all that much just yet, and this outside pass pawn.
Yeah, Robert, I already have a feeling if black is not going to strike back in the center, there's going to be just too late later. Maybe long castle and try to play something like e5 and try to open up the center and then maybe open up the bishop. This bishop on b7 is the worst piece you can imagine here in this pawn structure.
It is. And queen trades are going to be good for white as well. So you sometimes think, oh, if I trade queens, maybe I can neutralize whatever edge white's going for. But I have to say queen b4 check, which threatens the b2 pawn. I have to play queen c3. I don't want to give away that pawn. And then if we trade queens, now this bishop is still bad. And white is going to start pushing more pawns up the king side here. And bad bishop. Very, very bad bishop.
Very bad bishop. What is happening in the other game is very interesting, Robert. Sam went all in. He decided to trade the pieces on e5, take this pawn on e5, and now he is sacrificing an exchange. And for exchange, he said, like, okay, at least I'm going to have a very good attack on the king side.
A good practical choice by Shanklin here with rook h5, because if bishop b8, queen takes b8, there is checkmate in one threatened over here, and there's no easy way to stop it, because if you play h3, that bishop just sacrifices. I don't care. I'm going to take twice, and I'm threatening mate here. If you play f4, well, there's all sorts of problems. e3 is loose. There's a check here. It feels like this queen is about to enter the game and try to give a checkmate here. So the king is too open.
Yeah, that's right. So how about g3? Do you think white should take this rook on b8? Should accept this exchange sacrifice?
No, I actually think that maybe we can find a move first before we take that rook, because the rook will slide to c8 if we give one free turn. But if we make a move like f3 to start with, something like this, the bishop has to go back, and maybe then we can take this on b8, because we get here, and now g3 looks better. When the bishop was on g4, the bishop was going to slide into f3 and try to checkmate the white king. Now at least black doesn't have all the pieces staring at white's king.
Yeah, that's right. Here Wesley goes with f4. So it's not a mouse slip here, Robert. You cannot do mouse slip here. It's not that he wanted to play f3. First, he took the rook on b8, and now he plays f4 to cut this diagonal, and there's no checkmate trade anymore.
Makes sense. How are you going to continue the attack? Your queen will need to get to a square like h4. That takes forever. And if you take the bishop and the queen takes, we're trading pieces. White's happy to get rid of pieces when all he needs is a draw.
Yeah, that's right. I'm still thinking maybe knight takes bishop, queen takes bishop, and bishop f5 to attack the queen, and then bring the knight on g4 to attack h2 pawn, and bring queen d8, queen h4. Maybe that's can be the way to play here.
Yeah, I think you have to try something like it, and white will centralize the queen, and it just feels like black doesn't quite have enough pieces. Maybe black's not worse, but to be better from here, this rook can hop up to f2 or f3 depending on what black does. Maybe even a pawn storm, a pawn minority attack on the queen side, and maybe queen e5 to try to trade queens at some point. But the queen on d4 is very well placed.
Yeah, that's right. And once again, let's remind the previous result. Wesley won the game, so Sam is in must-win situation. Draw is not a result for him. He will be out of the Grand Prix, and he can't continue to fight for the prizes.
That's right. Yeah, he really needs to win this game, and he wastes queen d8. Maybe that opens up the move d4 in some positions, because if you can get the queen to d4, the king's in trouble, the bishop is under attack. So d4 is one of the moves that Wesley has to look out for.
That's right. I like this move, queen d8. In some lines, you can also bring this queen to h4 to get this queen into the attack. All right. Also, the other game is quite interesting. Oh, Wesley goes for b4, and he says, like, are you taking my bishop or not? If you're taking now, just take it.
And he wants the trade. He wants queen to d4. He realizes that with a centralized queen, that black won't have a free hand on the king side. Bishop f5, again, queen to d4. And this knight also can decide to help the king out by coming to g3. You love that maneuver, and it looks really good. in a moment soon.
Yeah, that's right. Seems like this attack here for a moment is slow. Let's take a look at the other game and see what has been played. As we can see, long castle happened and queen to e3. So it means that white wanted to stop e5 coming into the game.
Queen e3, good move. No e5 for you. And if queen b4 check, we just were talking about this. We don't want to trade queens if we're black. A lot of people believe that trading queens immediately makes the situation better, but the problem for black isn't the attack. It's that now g4, rook here, g5, push all your pawns, and white has the most advanced passed pawn. This is a very bad situation for black. So queen trade is not helping for now. f6 played by Mamedyarov, and Ketty, you called it. e5 is what he wants.
Yeah, e5 is what he wants. Is here Vincent going to stop this pawn by f4, or it's just too much to push the pawns in this way?
f4 does look good. I think the one reason you wouldn't play f4 is if you're worried that you can't play f3 and g4 and connect your passed pawns. But you don't need to have connected passed pawns for your position to be good. If you play g4, you have to take. If you allow g5, the pawns go up, that's a problem. There's such control over the position for white that this still looks like a very pleasant advantage and one that is risk-free and hard to defend from Mamedyarov's perspective.
Yeah, that's right. And you can always castle on the long side. As black's king is already on the long side, you will not have as heavy queenside attack as it could be in the other positions. So, all right, after f6, we're still waiting for the move in here. There's also bishop g4 possibility to pin the pawn for a moment, but black can play king b8, just a step aside for now, and then e5 will be still a move that black will think of. Although now I like this bishop f5 idea. This bishop will help h pawn as well.
Bishop f5, you can't take it because the queen is loose. Although there's queen b4 checks, we can't lose sight of that.
Oh no, I meant after e5, bishop f5.
Ah, okay, sorry. So like if we castle and e5, then put the bishop on f5, yeah, that looks very promising to get that pawn. No, that's a free h7 pawn for you. That looks no fun for black. And yeah, Vincent, he really has done a great job thus far. We see the advantage is in his favor. And will he play f4? Will he just castle queenside? And as you said, e5, bring that bishop into the game. So he's got choices here. And he also is doing well on the clock.
He's doing well on the clock. That's what I checked. And it makes such a big difference when you are struggling on the clock, you're making bad decisions and you don't have time for that. He went for long castle. And in case of e5, I'm so curious what is his plan. He can also push after e5, f4, and pin this pawn in here.
So many pieces staring at the e5 square. I like it because you're just trying to win this pawn directly. If you play e4, then we talked about a bad bishop. It's still bad, and white pushes this pawn to g5, and thank you for connected passed pawns.
Yeah, that's right. Another idea, Robert, is that if you push e5, you can lose a7 pawn. Like the takes e5, you take by the pawn probably on e5, and then queen a7. That's what you have to also calculate, because this move in fact is very dangerous. Then bishop g4 will be a serious check, and the king will be just so weak on the queen side. Well,
we'll see if how Vincent reacts. The e5 has been played by Mamedyarov. He realizes he can't sit and do nothing. If takes here, I guess if the queen takes, you can't take on a7, but then your pawn is on f6 isolated, and it's not, you would prefer to take with the pawn on e5. That's very clear. So still a better position for white, but it does give black more options. So I think he played f4, your first suggestion, and yeah, he's playing a great game, is Vincent Keymer.
Plays very, very nicely this game. And now if black closes the center, then all the game gonna go on the king side. And then we know white is better on the king side. If he keeps the tension in the center and plays rook to e8, then we might see this bishop g4, bishop f5 ideas as well. Or just bishop g4, starting with bishop g4 and rook e1 next to keep this tension on e file.
Yeah, rook e1 play is possible even at this moment, and it's just a tactical position. You don't want to take on d4. You're going to see that after bishop g4 check, your king has to go towards the center. Otherwise, you lose your piece down here. And now queen takes d4. We would see game one reversed. Take my rook again. You have two rooks for the queen, but the king is in huge danger here with the queen staring in all directions. So this would be a terrible situation for Mamedyarov. And we see rook dd8 played. So now we'll see how Vincent responds. Will it be rook e1? Will it be bishop g4 check? Will he take on e5 in either direction? I mean, he could take and take a7. Your point from earlier.
Possible. Yeah, possible. It's very good. Bishop g4 is then after that 8 minutes, a little bit more than 8 minutes on the clock. He's controlling the clock as well. Rook h to e1. That's a bit mysterious. We thought that rook wanted to be on h1 to help the h pawn to be pushed.
And maybe Vincent's claiming that time is not the problem. If e4 happens, g4, I'll put my rooks back on h1 and g1, and I'll still get my g5 move eventually. And the bishop does cover the pawn on h5. So the rook, I liked it on h1 behind the passed pawn. But if he's forcing e4, if he believes that he's forcing e4, then he's claiming that I'm still going g4, and white has all the time to just bring the rooks back.
Yeah, rook h1, rook g1, it's not a problem there. Shakra played king to b8 because in many variations, a7 pawn was hanging, and he also stepped aside from bishop g4 check. And now white has to move the bishop or trade the pawns in the center. What happens if he trades everything in the center? And then bishop f3.
So we get this whole trade, and then let bishop f3. I guess rook e1, and you have to. You have to play d4, otherwise you're toast. But this looks really good for white. You have outside pass pawns. Yes, black will have a pass pawn of his own, but the king is right here to block, whereas it's only a rook on the king side over here. It seems that it's not quite a winning advantage, which means that you could actually allow black to escape. But that looks scary for black with these pawns trying to march up the board.
Yeah, that's true. You can play rook h1 and then start to push the pawns. And I don't know really how black can stop these pawns. Maybe there are some counterplay, but also very hard to come up with this idea when you don't have much of the time on the clock. King b8 has been played, and we don't have still a move. Let's see what Vincent. He goes g4.
Mm-hmm. So he's welcoming any pawn capture. If you take on f4, you can just take with check. If you take on d4, then you can just take with the queen on d4. And he's just claiming that black's in a bind. I really believe that Mamedyarov has to create some dynamic problems for Vincent, where he knows Vincent is going to be better, but at least create some threats somewhere, somehow. I just don't know where those threats come from.
That's true. Robert, you see, in this position, there are not too much of tactics, and Vincent is taking over, and he feels very comfortable in this position. And the previous game, it was Shahriar who felt best in the position, and we can see the difference between these two players, between the style, and it's just very much clear.
I think Mamedyarov has to make a move like queen c7 or something, like just try to open the position up in the center without taking on d4, because that doesn't open the position up after. Maybe you could even trade queens, but just queen takes d4, although there is an argument to be made for the queen trade here, as you can have 3 d pawns. I don't care about that. What if I just do what you were saying before and start pushing these pawns? It's actually better to have the bishop on the board for white.
Yeah, that's right. We do have here the move. Shak decided to take the pawn on f4, queen f4 check, and queen to c7, cover the king in this way. This is a smart decision, Robert, because he kept f6 pawn so far on the board, but this pawn is hanging right now.
Yeah, he kept the isolated pawn, which sounds bad in theory, but in this position, it's very important because now g5 will not happen. And if you take the pawn, black will get way too much activity with the rooks aiming down the board here. This that's not f4, that's f4 though, with the queen. And it feels like black is suddenly with an attacking chance on the queen side. You have to be very careful before you grab pawns like that. So, Katie, I'm with you. I really like what Mamedyarov just did.
Yeah, and now I can see that c3 is a serious threat here for whites, and to open up the queen side. Maybe it's time to go to the end game, and queen trade can be good, and bishop, maybe bishop f3 or king d2. Robert, what about this? We have king comes to guard the bishop, and then rook f1 can be played to attack the f6 pawn.
I think there's just an immediate issue with rook e4 coming in this position, because now your pawn is under attack. And if you move your king away, then black is going to be very happy to increase the pressure. So king d2 is what you want. If you 2 turns in a row, you play king d2 and move the rook and bishop f3. But with the situation likely heading this way, and if we trade and get to this position, black is very happy to have this pawn on f6.
Yeah, that's right. And now it's quite hard to find here a plan for white as well. Maybe white wants to bring the king on f4, but that's a long way.
Yeah, it takes a journey, and black has this pass pawn over here on the queen side. So it looks like Mamedyarov doing very well to stay in this game. And that's why Vincent thought, and then when queen c7, we're in this end game. The other game, not too much has changed, Ketty. It looks like Wesley So still remains in control.
Yeah, they have not made much of the moves in the other game, and this one is progressing so fast. Robert, what do you think if we have rooks off the board, both rooks off the board, bishop endgame is winning for white?
Yes, and in part because the pawns are in light squares, which means that if your king goes all the way here, then it should be an option for the white king to get in there. But if black can play all right, let's try to force this. I'm going to try to get all the pieces off the board. So we get this, we play some move like a3. I can't even drag the rook to the square that I want to. And we get here, then I guess the problem for white is you can bring the king to f4. So let's bring that king, king e3, and your king's to come to f4. I can't even make this happen. There we go. We get to this position. But then there's this queen side problem for white. So maybe it looks losing, but you can't get all the moves you want in because black's going to create a pass pawn of his own.
Yeah, that's right. We do have a one rooks off the board. King d6 is the position right now. It's not easy to find here the plan for white. Vincent going to take some time, and the evil bar says it's still better for white, but not as big advantage as it used to be. So now let's take a look at the other game as well and check out, as we do have here some more moves. We can see that knight jumped on e4 square, and black offers the knight straight.
And I see a funny checkmate. So it's not going to happen, but if Wesley isn't paying enough attention after the trade here and you play rook f2, and this queen comes to h4, now you're getting checkmated because g3, there's queen takes g3 with rook h1 checkmate. The bishop is opened up to the square, and that would be checkmate.
It's beautiful. So we do have queens off the board, and interesting move, f5.
Okay, so f5, he wants queen e5 to defend against checkmate. So he sees what black is aiming for, and he's going to defend the pawn with his queen.
Robert, this is not the winning anymore, better for Wesley anymore. The evil bar says that now black has very good compensation.
And it looks like good compensation. I think that Wesley will bring a rook to the second rank. Rook e2, there might be bishop d3. So maybe, there's rook f4. No, you don't have rook f4. So rook e2, that might walk right into a skewer, although after bishop d3, somehow it's saying white's only slightly worse. Maybe that's a good situation for whites to get rid of this bishop, but you're down a pawn.
Yeah, you can't easily make these decisions when you have 2 minutes on the clock to give up the material that you have an extra. And Robert, there is just not very easy to find the moves here for white as well. Like rooks are just stuck there.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes rook, so he allows this. Ooh. So Wesley, I guess, has calculated that his position might be holdable here. Rook f2 would seem to be holding this, but rook takes f5, and this rook is hanging here. So if you take on f5, check, the rook comes here, another check. Black has 3 pawns and a bishop for a rook and a huge attack. So this is, you can't handle this if you are Wesley. So instead, he gives up his rook for the bishop back, and he's going to be down a pawn, Ketty.
Wow, what a turn of the events here. But he's gonna have very active queen. Queen can give some checks, and maybe that's his hope that with his checks he can get some pawns on the queen side or the center. But still, he has to watch out h2 pawn, which is now under black's attack.
Wow, I mean, his rook's under threat. So if he goes rook f2, bishop takes f1. Is there queen e8 check and queen takes f7? I think that's what he might be relying on, because there's this threat of queen g6, queen e8 as a draw. But this pawn is hanging as well. The king will have to run, and black will at the very least be up a pawn.
Oof, that's a very scary position to me. He instead goes to rook captures the bishop and plays this position without a pawn, and he hopes that he can hold it.
And all this talk I was saying about Wesley So being unbeatable with white, Sam says, you don't know what you're talking about. He was king h7. He's up a pawn. He has an attack going. White's pawns are weaker. Sam, wow, I'm actually just very impressed right now with the way he's been playing.
Yeah, that's right. For 3 Grand Prix, which I have seen so far, nothing really happens like this in the other tiebreakers. Like usually we have first game with the result, and the same game is quite peaceful and it's a draw and the one player just goes to the semifinal. But now Sam and Vincent, they put up the final and they're fighting back.
Wow. Yeah,
king h5.
So what's white's? It's not white's turn, but if white had a free turn, you can't even play rook f4 because queen g3. You can rook f3, the queen might even come to e1. It feels like white just doesn't have moves, and Sam with the black piece, I mean, this is really just a phenomenal game from him.
It is. Now he goes for queen c4, and what's very important, he has no check. So this king h7 was very nice move. The king is safe. So far, there's no check. Rook f2 has been played, and is he going to push the pawns on the queen side, like c5 maybe, and try to create a pass pawn?
He could push the pawns on the queen side. He could push the pawns on the king side. He could play f6 at some point and then push the h pawn. He then can push the c pawn. He has so many options, and he also is ahead on the clock. So Sam Shankland in the driver's seat right now. A very impressive display with an exchange sacrifice and then outplaying Wesley from there.
c5 is on the board. He's going to create a pass pawn d file or c file. c5 is itself already a pass pawn. Maybe he will just try to bring this queen somewhere nice and then push the pawn forward.
How is it that you play the move c5, which looks like such a logical move, and it's a bad? It went from -3 to 0.
Oh.
Oh! Oh, the rook's locked out of the game.
Oh, no.
He locked the rook out. And if you play h5 to try to open the rook, look at this move, queen f4. If you take the queen, pawn takes, and the rook is trapped.
That is horrible.
Oh.
Oh, no.
g4 just happened out of nowhere.
That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So, is that so bad now? Can black still push the pawns?
So which pawn do you want to push?
Maybe the, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that really happened out of nowhere. And the other game is in the end game as well. And it looks like the rooks are still on the board. So Vincent's trying to win that. But g4, and if you get queen f4 and then h4, that rook's trapped.
Yeah, that's it. How about to start with f6 here?
Okay, queen f4.
Queen f4. h4 is a threat.
I guess not yet, because the pawn is loose for at least one turn. He went queen d3, did Sam, and oh my gosh, that rook is trapped.
Oh no, that's the worst scenario here for Sam. Queen d1. He wants to attack on g4, and this is not the move that is liked by Engine. Maybe rook f1, rook f2, just like this to chase the queen.
Yeah, all Wesley needs to draw. He was rook G2 instead. He wants H4. And I guess Queen E1, the only way to stop H4. But after Queen E1, even the move Queen G3, because if you don't trade queens, I play H4. And if you do trade queens, White's not losing this endgame. This rook is about to win these pawns, and White might even win this endgame because that rook is so bad on G5.
Wow, that was just because of one move, C5. I felt bad that I suggested this move. But G4 is came for nowhere, Robert. This move, it was outlook by Sam for sure.
It was a shocking move because when your king is in danger, you don't often think about throwing your pawns forward. But he realized it's just a queen because the rook is out of play. And now look at this, rook D2. He's winning this pawn, and there's no way that White is worse anymore. White is the one who can maybe even play for a win. Obviously, Wesley will accept a draw if it's offered because it gets him through. Oh my goodness.
That's a horrible scenario here. Is there a chance to play G6 and try to open up the rook?
Yeah, but G6 is happening a bit late. The rook will be free, but you've already lost one pawn and your other pawns are under attack.
Oh, wow. That's the worst scenario here indeed. First time he played so nicely. He sacrificed in exchange and tried to attack on the king side. And he had really good position, but he played a little bit too fast. Maybe he had time.
He did. He had, I mean, look at the clock right now. He's still ahead on time. He just didn't see G4. It was off his radar. And we'll show that one more time before we switch to the other game. That in this moment, he allowed G4, which who saw that coming? That's surprising. But he should have played the move H5 or F6 first and then H5 to make sure G4 doesn't happen. Instead, he plays the very logical C5. And as soon as that happens, Wesley, you don't need to ask him twice. He plays G4, noticing the rook is trapped. And wow, what a turn of events. We're in this endgame. And yeah, I think we can safely go to the other game as our focus for now, because it looks like Vincent Keymer, he's still pressing against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. His rook on A7, Ketty, his pawns on the king side, looking like he's closing in, but he probably needs to be incredibly accurate, and he goes H6.
Oh, Robert, the game, Wesley So and Sam Strangland agreed on a draw. So that means that Sam is out from Grand Prix and Wesley So goes to the semifinals.
Yes, and it's funny because the DGT, when you make a draw, the kings go to the center. And I will just show that as very, very quickly come right back to this game. It looks like White blundered, but what that happened is the kings go on E4 and E5 when the draw is agreed. So the black king's on E5, the white king's on E4. So that's why it looks like King E4 happened, which it obviously didn't, because that's just a blunder. So back to the game that is actually in play. It is Vincent and Shakhriyar, H6, king to went to G8, and then bishop to D1, making sure, Ketty, that if C3 happens, once we trade on the square, the bishop blockades this pass pawn.
Oh, that's a beautiful move. I like this move, bishop to on D1. And this bishop blockades this C3 pawn and also helps White's pawn to be pushed forward. H7 will be guarded. There will be some checks. Rook can be also defended on this diagonal. And Robert, do you think at some point maybe he will push G5 to bring even king on the board? On the king side?
He's going to want to, that's for sure. So he'll be looking at G5 and this bishop on E6, Ketty. It's such a bad piece. We didn't like it on B7. We don't like it on E6. And we have a trade.
We will never like this bishop, let's be honest.
No, we will not. It can't get into the game. If it went on E4, I would like it there.
Oh, come on.
You just can't get there. But if you put the bishop on E4, black is very happy.
Yeah. But it's so hard to get in there. There should be some way to win here right away for Vincent. How about to let you go this bishop on E4 and play rook A6? Well, yeah, if you guard this bishop by king F7, then I have H pawn. I can push that pawn forward and take your a lovely looking bishop on E6 and bishop C2 now.
It's winning. It's very, very winning. You're going to check and get a queen over here. And The bishop protects the pawn. So b3, trying to distract the bishop, doesn't even work, because once this check happens, the king has to go back, and then I can even take the pawn as the rook defends over here.
Yeah, that's winning. Instead of rook a6, Vincent goes to rook a7 with same ideas to attack the bishop pawn e6, and we have now rook to d3. Because if you play bishop f7, then h7 wins the bishop, and I can say the game has been over.
Yes, Vincent Keymer wins. He had no choice but to win this game if he wanted to stay alive in the competition, and he beats Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Vincent Keymer 2 days in a row impressing us.
Wow, in must-win situation, he managed to outplay Shakhriyar in the well-known theory line where Mamedyarov felt so confident in it. He went to it, but let's be honest, he never gave a chance to Mamedyarov to come back to the game. It was nicely played by Vincent.
Honestly, Vincent kind of played like Wesley So, that boa constrictor style, where from the early stage when he clarified the position around here, just to, if we can put this on screen just for a second, where it was clear that Black's bishop on the light squares was terrible. White had this outside pass pawn. And really, when we got here, Ketty, and f4 was played, like, it was just White had this bind and Black never found life for his pieces. An amazing game from Vincent Keymer.
Yeah, nicely played. And you know what, Robert? Now we are going to the blitz portion. So it's not over yet. It's not over yet. We're going to have now 2 games in blitz, 3+2. And now we're going to say a lot of interesting things happening, because this is not a lot of time for over the board chess. It's not a blitz online the game that you can pre-move. You cannot do pre-moves, and you have to also be very precise, because 2 seconds increment can be a lot in some positions too.
That's right. If it's an end game and you think, I'm going to flag my opponent, and suddenly they gain 2 seconds, then 4, then 6, and they build that clock back up, it's not going to happen. So I'm excited for that, Ketty. Tie breaks are always fun, but when they get down to blitz, it's just pure excitement.
It is, and we might even see Armageddon. I'm up to this. I think you are too, and also our viewers. You guys, we're taking now the break, and we're coming back very soon to you. And yeah, don't go anywhere.
Hikaru Nakamura is playing for the win, even though his opponent has a pawn 1 step away from becoming a new queen. It's sensational the amount of risks Hikaru is taking here.
It seems like Black is making some progress finally, and
well, he just made the decision to trade off everything. He did get a draw, but that could very easily have been a win.
it looks like it should be winning for Bibisara. I mean, Black only has that 1 queen in the attack, and White has an extra piece and lots of pawns. I think we're going to see a little bit of an upset in this game.
And Muzichuk ends up losing on time, and Asobayeva confirms her excellent form by winning that matchup.
This is incredible. Bartosz Sachko is up a piece against Magnus Carlsen.
Sachko, playing in his native Poland, has a winning position, and Magnus resigns. Sachko is on a perfect score, having defeated the reigning world champion.
The lead just keeps changing. Asobayeva has already been in the lead, and now she's going to get it back. I mean, because this game is about to be over.
And Shuvalova has to resign. In the end, she was 5 pawns down. There's no hope saving that.
We got Sindarov and Fedoseev is actually the battle of the leaders on 7 points out of 8.
There's a pawn endgame now, only pawns remaining, and Sindarov is going for the win! Sindarov is going for the win! Fedoseev rushes his king back into defense, and the guys agree to a draw. Oh my gosh, and both of these players remain in the lead. Aronian with an extra pawn in the rook endgame, and Fedoseev, he's unable to do anything about the white pawns in conjunction with the white king just making their way up the board. It's over! Levon Aronian taking the lead in the tournament. Aronian rushing his king over to the left-hand side, trying to get rid of Black's rook. The king is now coming to the aid of the pawn that's only 2 squares away from becoming a new queen. And Aronian is making very good progress here. And Anish Giri resigns the game.
Levon Aronian, 13 points. Fantastic result. He's playing so confidently.
Hikaru Nakamura is not on the list. He tested positive for COVID and had to withdraw from the tournament. Bibi Sara has a 1.5 point lead. She's gonna win it if she wins this one. Look at this. Bibi Sara with her queen can go for the queen trade. If the queens are traded, she's gonna win this game, and she does go for it. The queens are traded off the board. The bishop coming in against the white king to give a check, and Goryachkina resigns. Asobayeva is the world champion.
A lot of credit to our women's world blitz champion, the young player from Kazakhstan, making her name known to the whole world.
Maxim making his calculations. Can he stop that black pawn in time? And he thinks he can do that after lots of captures. It's Aronian who's down by a pawn, but Aronian's king is unable to assist against the white king making its way forward, and Aronian now will resign the game. And what a stunning turnaround there. He made a couple of mistakes, and the Frenchman capitalizes on that. Dubov trying to get his pieces pointing in towards Black's king, but Alireza has a pawn 1 step away from becoming a new queen.
And he has made a queen, and he knows that he can always sack that queen for the bishop. And that is the end of the game. And we're almost certainly guaranteed a tie for first place after the final game.
He's using his queen to help out. That pawn is moving forward, and Aronian now, he's gonna have to resign. The pawn is becoming a new queen. Aronian does keep on playing, but there's no hope. He resigns the game. Was that the championship for Alireza Firouzja? Actually, it's definitely not the championship, because Jan Krzysztof Duda has managed to win his game, so there will be a tie. The question is whether or not Maxim Vachier-Lagrave will be able to join them, and Vachier-Lagrave has beaten Magnus Carlsen. Jan Krzysztof Duda and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave will be playing for the gold medal. It's less than 30 seconds on the clock for Duda, who needs to figure out this endgame. And he chooses to push his pawn forward.
Exactly. He chose to protect it with this rook b4, not going in for that trade where he might lose a pawn.
Yeah, the pawns are just getting exchanged off, and the guys agree to a draw. The handshake there, a solid game from Duda. Duda is actually giving away his bishop. A strange decision from the Polish player there. He chooses to move the one knight, losing the other.
I'm not thrilled about where white took this position, because certainly he's not better at all in this endgame. Duda is going to have to play for a draw. Yeah, certainly I don't see any danger at all for black. They just agreed to a draw.
Now, to find the victor of this tournament, we're going to play one game at a time. And if someone wins, that is the world champion. Maxim Vachier-Lagrave now in the end game. Duda trying to use his king to stop white's king from getting into the game. But here, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave is able to capture another pawn on the side of the board. 2 extra pawns for him now. Duda resigns. Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, the world champion in 2021. And here we see Maxim Vachier-Lagrave being congratulated. He is the world blitz champion.
Welcome back, everyone. This is FIDE Grand Prix 2022 final leg, and we are having tie breaks. Today, we had already one result, and we do have a semi-finalist. Wesley So goes and joins the rest of the players. And unfortunately, Sam Shankland ends the tournament in here. But Robert, we do have one last game in progress, and now this game goes to the Blitz tie breaks. We're gonna have 2 games now.
Yes, Vincent Keymer, he wins when he has to, which means we're getting 3-minute plus 2-second increment chess. And both these players familiar with Blitz time controls. They play online a ton, but they've also played at many Blitz tournaments over the board. In particular, Hikaru Nakamura, he is a speed demon. And with his creativity, that could pose problems for Vincent. But in this last game, Ketty, the way that Vincent handled this entire game was so impressive.
It was truly impressive. We can take a look before the start of the Blitz game and check it out once again, the key points, which was the most important here.
Yeah, right here, queen trade being offered. We know that younger players, they tend to avoid the end games, but not Vincent. He's way too strong, and he takes on c7. And Ketty, as we saw the game develop, both sides bringing their kings up the board. And around here, Black makes this move b4 to open up the queen side and try to get a pass pawn. But this could be a moment where maybe advancing was counterproductive.
Yeah, Robert, after b4, you allow your opponent to open up the a file. And we can see that now Vincent is going to use that for the rook, and there can be some checks. So I kind of think it was unnecessary complication from Shak's side, as he just needed in this position draw to go to the semifinals.
Yeah, perhaps he should have prepared it with a rook maneuver. Maybe he can play c3 without playing b4 and go after this a3 pawn, getting active. But instead he plays b4. And I can hardly blame Mamedyarov for going wrong, because at this point, the evaluation bar still says white is only slightly better, but after king f8, it says that white is winning. And when you're playing an endgame, you want your king to be close to the enemy pass pawns. But king d6 going towards the center is actually the correct move here. So it's really difficult to blame Mamedyarov for going with the very intuitive king f8, but the counterintuitive king to d6 was the move that held the balance. And the reason why is that if this bishop slides back to d1, and then you play the move b3, and you're trying to play c3 at the right moment, we leave that as a threat, and the bishop, very importantly, it can't join the diagonal, which is how Vincent won the game, is getting the bishop protecting this h7 square.
Yeah, that's right. Such a beautiful idea here by king d6 and b3. I like this one so much. Actually, Robert, I think we are receiving the moves, and we can take a look now in this game. They do have a little bit more time control, as I thought.
Yeah, we'll get that figured out with the clock situation, because it should be 3+2 time control, which means 5 minutes. Looks wrong. Everybody just bear with us as we get this figured out. It is being relayed from Germany. Crazy things happen, but the position at the moment, Ketty, it looks like not a single piece has been traded. It's a calm looking position for now, but then they threw in these a-pawn moves.
Yeah, Robert, I wanted to ask before the start of the game. Now we have correct times, if they are going to repeat the openings. And the answer is very clear. They are not going to repeat the openings. But in this position, Robert, now Black is clearly preparing c5 breakthrough in the center, which gives up b5 square for knight. And White can also think some moves like e4 by himself to push for this pawn in the center, and that can be a very good idea for White as well.
It looks like a great idea, just trying to open up the position, gain some space, and Black is incredibly solid right now. So sometimes people want to play moves like c5, open up the position, and Mamedyarov says, I'm going to calmly play h6. If you play e4, we will see a series of trades on that square, and then Black can bring the other knight to f6 to challenge this bishop, and then if that bishop moves c5 happens, and the bishop on b7, which was in a clogged diagonal. Now the diagonal is free, and it's that bishop that reigns supreme. So we see the move queen to b1 by Vincent Sedketi. Still no trades, a little bit of tension, but not too much.
Yes, they are both waiting, and we might also see some moves like h3 here from white side, maybe rook d8 from black side. So none of the sides want to push the pawns in the center or trade the pawns in the center, because these might have they can cause some weaknesses in the position. So they don't want, and they're waiting just a little bit. And now we have Shahriar says like, okay, I'm going first. I'm older, and I'm going to do it myself.
Respect your elders, he says. And it goes to show why he played h6, because he wants to take with the knight on d5, which would not have been possible if that pawn were still on h7. So that is one of the main reasons he played h6, is so he could play c5. And Ketty, when I look at this position, I think that if we start trading pieces on d5, it's even black who could say I'm better here, because the pawn on b3 is immediately under some fire, as well as this knight on f3. So he avoids the trade with knight b5.
And now we do have knight on b5. That's pretty looking knight, but black can also play knight b4 and start to chase the light square bishop. Now e4 is on the board. There's also knight f4 just to keep the knight on the king side, and he goes for that. Oh, okay, it's Shahriar. Of course, he wants to go for the king side. And he will look for some sort of sacrifices here. Maybe he can try to push f5 at some point to open up the light squares in this diagonal on the king side too.
But look at that evaluation bar. It's going down. And I think that with this knight on f4, that's the best minor piece on the board. The knight on b5 looks good. It's on a kind of outpost, but it's not threatening anything. So Mamedyarov takes on here. And why is it sky high right now? There's something here, a tactic, and maybe it's involving this move f5, opening this bishop up.
Can be. There can be some now I see rook c4 beats takes c4 and knight e2 check. It gives us nothing, but it can be idea. We can remember it, but I really like f5, and here we have it.
This is looking very, very bad for Vincent Keymer. This bishop on b7. Just if we scroll back to this moment, that bishop is behind its pawns. And now look at it. It is a free piece. It is open across the entire diagonal. And if you take on f5, that's real bad. Bishop takes f3. And if you take with the pawn, you get checkmated in 2 moves with queen coming to g2.
Game over for white, and this is definitely not the best scenario, but the time is ticking and he's down to the seconds. Once again, we see Vincent Keymer in the situation when he's struggling on the board and also on the clock. And it's so hard to come up here with a move, because e4 pawn is hanging, bishop e4 can be played. He goes knight to d2.
I mean, you're hanging on by a thread. It kind of reminds me of the... Sorry, go ahead. Can you see queen g5 coming?
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it just reminds me of the game between Vichy Anand and Levon Aronian, where Vichy was black. That game where, he opened up the position and his pieces, oh my goodness, came to life.
Ooh. Look at this. Knight g2.
That's queen h4, attacking h2, attacking e4 with threats everywhere. I can't even draw enough arrows.
And Robert, when the g-pawn is gone, your king is all alone. You cannot really save your king. Couldn't find any counterplay here. Goes knight d6. He's trying to find here some counterplay, but hold on, what's going on? Knight can be captured. And queen g5 is a serious threat now. Just to ignore the bishop on b7 is hanging, but who cares about that bishop? There is a checkmate on the board. Knight h3 is a checkmate in 1 move as well.
So h4 stops both checkmates at the same time, but after queen takes h4 with the threat of queen to the g file and mate on g2 and mate down here, he takes the bishop.
Rook c4 is the time now. Look at this. And then knight e2 and bishop. Knight e2 is a... No, it's not checkmate.
It was a moment ago. It was a checkmating threat. I guess the knight did block the diagonal, but he gets here. And isn't knight e2 check? Queen takes, queen h2, check and mate. That bishop on b8 is the piece that's helping out. He played knight h3. He wins a queen for free instead.
What a game. Everything was hanging, and Shahriar spent just a few minutes, not all the time that he had on the board. He is just phenomenal player.
I mean, the guy is an attacking legend. There are few players in the history of chess that can attack as viciously as Shahriar Mamedyarov. And it came out of nowhere, right? At first, it looked, all right, solid position. We can see H6. The position is locked up, not much happening. And then how quickly did he play C5? And one mistake from Vincent, and that mistake is after E4, I would say is the first mistake, allowing the knight into F4. He should have kept an equal position, but then he goes bishop C4, and that doesn't even look like a mistake. That looks like a normal move. But as soon as it happens, after pawn takes and F5, Keddy, the game was just completely over.
Yeah, nicely spotted by Shah. And Robert, Vincent is not some random grandmaster. He's a talented player. He's young. He deserves to be in here in this tournament, and winning in this way against a younger opponent and very talented opponent is just too brutal. Shah, it is just brutal.
Leave the poor boy alone. Let him be. But this was a really nice attack from Mamedyarov. And it's honestly one of these situations where it reminds us that Shahriar has 20 plus years more experience than a Keymer does, because the position looked calm, but Mamedyarov, he understood that beneath the surface, it's just like an alligator is waiting there, and then puts his head above the surface with the lungs.
Hold on, Robert. Hold on. Oh. Who you are talking about?
Hey, I'm talking about your gator right there. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, since you have a gator, you must know that gators can move. They move their lungs from up into their head. That's why when they're surfacing, they put their head above water and nothing else, because they can breathe that way with their lungs up there. And so that's what it felt like in this game.
It was a nice imitation of the crocodiles. We like it. Me and Lizzie like it. Robert, we're going now to take a very short break. We will be back soon, and we're gonna see once again this game because it happened so fast. We did not see all the details. So guys, don't go anywhere because we'll be back very soon.
It's game 6, it's day 6 for the 2021 FIDE World Chess Championship. What will the world champion do with his third chance with the white pieces?
He's not recalling.
He's studying.
He's studying.
I like that.
And that's important because Magnus caught him off guard. He's trying to figure out this position. And just because he didn't take the pawn and he didn't develop, doesn't mean that the rest of the game is easy for him.
Like, from the way he's acting, his body language, and the fact that he was playing very rapidly, and now he's stopping to think, it looks like knight c6 was a bit of a surprise, but I don't understand how it can be a surprise.
I don't know. The way he's played this game so far.
This really has been the most impressive game Jan has played.
Magnus moves the queen up. Game on, ladies and gentlemen. We have action in game 6, not bishop b4.
What did they have in mind? It was bishop b4 was such a natural move. I'm kind of puzzled.
Jan is trying to keep this confusing for Magnus with these moves. Wait, what just happened?
E4.
Knight f4. Oh, nice e5.
Oh, no, this could be trouble.
Jan is blowing this position here with no time now.
Well, like queen b4.
Look, knight e4. Because if you take the knight, you lose the bishop.
Magnus Carlsen has reached time control. Jan Nepomniachtchi has one more move to make or he loses on time.
Queen b3.
Oh my gosh.
Jan is defending this endgame.
Jan is defending this endgame incredibly well. I think that this is, frankly, if Jan holds this, it might be as telling in regards to what we'll be talking about in the World Championship as anything else, because this is the test. we have broken history here in the 2021 World Chess Championship, because the move rook to d2 officially makes this game the longest game in World Chess Championship history.
Black has to be careful.
This is going to be so hard for Jan to hold, because he's just going to keep pushing this.
I think that's just winning, because you can no longer check that king anymore.
I expect Jan Nepomniachtchi to throw in the towel in this position.
That's the way it is. As I said, it shouldn't be easy in a World Championship match. You have to try for every chance, no matter how small it is.
And I see what they're saying. I'm just say things like this. And they, oh, why'd you put the audio back on? I was having such a good time knowing that they couldn't hear me. Come on, producer. Don't let them hear me talk.
All right. So what we said about the prices, you guys didn't catch it. So this game is very important, Robert, for money wise as well. Like, why not? Because 2 spots has been already taken by Hikaru Nakamura and Richard Robert. So Richard Robert, oh my God. Are we still muted? Please.
Let's pretend like we were, and then we can rewind that. So yes, what about Mr. Robert?
So Robert, those 2 places are already taken, and now there is the prize fund that these players, which we have still in the Grand Prix, are playing for. And this is really a big prize fund, right? 150,000 euros. And any of this player can get the maximum of the prize, 24,000. And by the win of this Blitz game right now, the match, either Shahrir or Vincent gonna guarantee 12,000 euros.
That's right. So a lot of prize money at stake. And this is what happens in Blitz chess, which is the time control we're currently at, where if we show the game once more, or at least this part of the game, where Vincent didn't have enough time to calculate. So after the c5 break and pawn takes, knight takes, this whole thing with e4 and knight f4, even here, it's still okay for white. But when you have to make a split-second decision because you only have 3 minutes for the entire game, you're going to make a move like bishop c4, not anticipating that f5 is going to happen and crush you in the diagonal.
Yeah, I don't know what's the best move here. Maybe d5, not to allow this light square to be open anytime soon, but it's so hard to find any move. And bishop c4 looked to me very natural, and I thought bishop c4 kind of stops f5 because this diagonal will be open, king on g8 might be open, but yeah, this didn't stop Shak to play f5.
No, he just goes for it. And one of the things, if you take this pawn f5, that's when blunders occur, and that's exactly what Ketty is referring to, is that the king on g8 is misplaced, so the queen can take this rook without being captured in response. So Mamedyarov, he says, I don't need my pieces. I'm just going to go for all of this, and you can't even take because F3 is loose. That's how quickly games can turn.
Yeah, that's right. And from this moment, after F5, when he got a little bit of initiative here, then we saw sacrifice, knight G2. And after this sacrifice, you cannot really survive because your king is open. There are two bishops on B8, B7, hitting to the king side, and also queen comes to the game.
Right, this knight is pinned, so you can't take the queen. The king has to go back to the corner, and once this happens, this queen F4, queen H4, you attack this knight, you attack this pawn, and look at these beautiful bishops on the queen side.
Yeah, they are very, we call it crocodile eyes. I can show this. Waiting back in the water for some victims there. And yeah, this didn't happen, and Vincent played knight d6. That was a very interesting decision. It was out of desperation, let's say so, right? Because this knight is hanging.
Yes.
And yeah, Shak just ignored that and played knight to f4. And he threatens here checkmate in one move. Knight h3 is a checkmate. And also queen g5, queen g2 is another way to checkmate.
Yeah, I just like this. Knight h3 checkmate. I'm always a fan of this, where the king can't move and it's in check, and that is mate. So instead, Vincent just put h4, but that doesn't stop anything. Mamedyarov didn't have to play rook takes c4, okay? He could have just went queen takes h4 and gone for this checkmate or this checkmate, but instead he plays rook takes c4 because he wants a knight e2 check, and he gets what he wanted. Instead goes knight h3, and this queen is lost.
And so the game, so here we had a resignation, and once again Vincent is in must-win situation, but now he's going to have black pieces. And Robert, do you think we're going to have some Catalan once again?
So Mamedyarov gets white. What's he going to do? That's the big question, because he may try to go for a peaceful line, or he'll do what he normally does and just say, I'm going to throw all my pieces at you and try to win. I don't think we'll see that same Catalan line because now that Vincent has a bit of time to look it up in between games, he may avoid repeating the exact variation. So I think that Mamedyarov will play something a little more solid, is my guess.
Let's see, although it could be, I think it still will be very unpleasant to see the same line as you lost the first game, and you don't have too much of time to look through the variations and to see what is the accurate move to play. But we're going to see this game start in few minutes, and yeah, Vincent is not in the best situation. But Robert, before the break, you mentioned that Shakir has as much experience as, I think Vincent is not even that old, as Shak has the experience in chess.
Yeah, because Vincent's 17 and Shakir in his later 30s. So he's been playing high-level chess for as long as Vincent has been alive. So when you have that kind of wealth of experience and you're playing somebody who's, sure, age belies their strength and their experience, it's still a situation where for Vincent, he's going to get caught in moments that he doesn't have that kind of history to rely on. And for Mamedyarov, he's like, oh, I'm playing quietly. Vincent thinks, I'm just going to try to draw with black, win with white. And then he strikes with c5, and then captures and center plays f5, and the whole collapse happened before we could even wrap our heads around it.
That's right. That was too fast. The game went too fast, and this time control happened in just seconds. And Robert, also interesting fact about Shakir Mamedyarov, he has two sisters. Both of his sisters are women grandmasters and very strong players, and a member of the national team for many years already. So they are three siblings, all of them being very successful in chess and playing chess since they are, I don't know, 5 years old, 6 years old.
Yeah, and I would ask, are those the best siblings in chess? And The obvious answer is the Polgar sisters are they're very high up there. But are there any other siblings that you can think of like
Muzychuk sisters?
Muzychuk sisters, of course,
Grandmasters, world champions.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they're two rather than three, so I don't know how to calculate for that. But yeah, I'm wondering if they're beyond those sibling pairs that we've mentioned or trios, if anybody else comes to mind.
Yeah, maybe chat remembers, and we're here to read the comments. I can't remember, to be honest.
Currently, there's
Forrest, Van Forrest family. Two brothers and a sister. Their sister, she's quite young, but she's very talented and has been winning a lot of tournaments. Oh, we have first move.
We do,
D4.
and we have D4. The clocks will fix themselves. Don't worry, everybody. They're not playing 5-minute chess. They're playing 3 minutes with a 2-second increment. The clock's
G3.
like G3. Okay, well, we have the start of the Catalan and Bishop B4 check. And okay, the clocks are now set.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, but
we have the same position, but hold on. This C4 happened earlier, and now we have B6. Vincent just changed it by B6.
Yes, B6 played and Bishop B7. So none of this whole capturing on C4, getting greedy. He's playing a quieter approach from the black side. But Ketty, I don't know if that's going to suffice. This actually looks like what we just saw where Vincent was white and Shak was black.
Yeah, it looks very similar if we have some but the bishop on G2, that's maybe changed something here in this structure. I thought Vincent gonna go to D takes C4 because in Catalan D takes C4 is the main challenge for white, and if you go for the main line as now Vincent goes, it's just very peaceful for white.
Yes, and he goes Rook C8, maybe trying to go for C5, but that's only leading to trades, and trades are good for Mamedyarov, not just on this very board, but for the match situation. And I don't know if this is the correct line for Vincent to go down to play for a win, but Ketty, I just don't know how he's going to get a position that he can really push for an advantage.
Yeah, that's right. We had knight off trade on the board. Now E5 pawn is very strong in these structures, and white can try to trade the pawns on D file and then push E4 and open up this position and trade more and more pieces. Black cannot really stop that, and then this Rook C8 looks a little bit silly there, as the pawn on D4 is no longer there, and you cannot play C5 with all this open up the center ideas. And now this E5 pawn just divides the board in the half, and white has this advantage on the king side.
Yeah, the F pawn might just go right ahead. F4, F5, F6, and seems like it's going to lead to trouble for black. But I have to say, even if white is objectively better and might go checkmate the black king at some point, that having the pawns like this, where white has a 5-on-3 advantage on the king side from the E to the H file, and black has a 4-on-2 from the A to the D file, at least that gives you some long-term chances to play for a position that's not balanced, and maybe play for an endgame where you can start pushing your queenside pawns.
Yeah, that's right. But this game can be very sharp. Knight C4 is on the board. I wanted to suggest this move, Robert, but then I was like, but what if black is not taking? So I decided not to suggest it at all. But now D takes C4 is impossible because you don't want to give up your light square bishop because it's just it weakens too much of the squares. And now knight comes on E5 and he wants to play knight to F5. This knight goes again to the king side. We have seen some...
I'm shaking my head like, no. Don't let the knight to F5. That looks very scary. And here it comes. Knight F5 feels like a pre-move almost. And you bring the knight there, you push your pawn to F4, the bishop on B2. It's going to be open later in this game. This looks very difficult for black.
It does indeed. His Shak is taking a little bit of time. That's dangerous. He's calculating some checkmates there. This is not a good sign when Shah is taking some time. Black wants to play bishop to F8 next move, maybe, so attack the pawn on E5. So F4 will be a very useful move.
and knight f5, there it is. And f4 played by Mamedyarov, connect 4. He wins that game. Chess players love board games.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
Yeah, so this just, I mean, what is black going to do? If you ever play g6, you're opening up even more dark squares, and I'm going to play knight d6 because now I'm forking all your pieces, and if you take, thank you so much for opening my bishop on these dark squares.
Queen comes on d4 next, and that can be really difficult for black to hold the position. So yeah, black has to be very careful here to push the pawns on the side, but then I don't know, bishop on b7 is locked. He goes to f6, and e4 was almost a pre-move here.
E4, I mean, just breaking the position open. That king is not happy to be on g8, and if you take on e4, then white is not even going to take back. I think white's going to bring this queen over here and just go for the attack. Knight h6 check is a huge threat. If you continue taking things, check, and thank you for your queen.
Another game can end in this way, that he's just going after queen. g6 has been played now. f6, g6, this is too much of the weaknesses on the king side. He can sacrifice now knight on f5. He can also bring the queen on g4 and pin this pawn. And now, yeah, we have this on the board.
Yeah, and I don't care what the evaluation bar says, because in a blitz game, and look at the clocks are changing. We're not exactly sure the situation, but it's not much time remaining from the very start. So this king on g8 looks wide open, but Vincent, he's fighting well here. He is taking a pawn, and he's up a pawn. So if white doesn't go and checkmate that black king, watch out. Vincent has chances.
Yeah, queen g4 seems to be a bit inaccuracy at the final move, although it looked quite logical. And now if pawns are trading, queen gets on f5. So he wants to, at some point, get this knight out of the board, not out of the board, somewhere, and then to play queen on f7 with a check. So knight on e5 now is hanging, and black has to worry about this knight. Ooh.
Okay, so the king went to h1, the pawn went to d4 to close the diagonal. Things are happening here. Time trouble, this kind of stuff happens. Whoa, knight d3, but can I just take this pawn because queen f7 check and this bishop is hanging?
Possible, but is there something like king h8, Robert? You don't have a check. And rook f8.
Oh my gosh, a queen f5 going for this check. Yeah, you can bring that king to, because queen h6 instead, giving up this because he wants rook to, so rook g5. Wow. And the queen g7 is mate, so it goes here, and a rook, other rook, it goes e5, rook g7. They have no time.
That black is having now winning position because there's too much material, and oh, it's a blunder.
Yeah, no time on the clock. And now it's winning for, oh my goodness. If queen g5, there's e7 and rook f8 checkmate.
Oh, and here we had a resignation, or yeah, it was a resignation after rook f7. Wow, if you cannot take this rook, then e takes f with a check. Rook e7 is impossible. Queen takes g7. Robert, bishop c8 was a blunder. What else he could play here?
Wow, I mean, the way that happened was, we couldn't even wrap our heads around. We couldn't even see it in time. So let's bring up the last few moves. So at this point in time, Ketty, when e4 happened, the second pawn joining the attack, g6, he went queen g4, which apparently was a mistake, playing this move. And we got to this position where black should have just recaptured this pawn on e5 with the knight. Scary move to make. He did make that move. And after queen f4, bishop c5 check and d4 was a mistake, but it doesn't look like a mistake at first.
Right.
Because you're shutting down the bishop. So b4 played in time trouble, but knight h6 check first, I guess, is the way to go about this and going for the attack. But Katie, this was crazy at this point.
It was crazy, and so many things happened so fast here. Queen h6, and at this point, Black is the one who is having better position. But it's so hard to guard the king, which is just alone on this side. And now there is a serious threat coming on the board. Another rook get on the f file, and even e5. So he can also bring the bishop if he needs bishop e4 and attack on h7 pawn.
But it looks like e5 was an inaccuracy, rook f1, with the idea of keeping this queen stuck here. And if the rook comes to g7, which was a main idea, I think that it says zeros. So I think that rook f7 would make a draw, that if we get to this position, after queen takes, the king can't possibly escape, and the queen will just give a bunch of checks here.
Which could be really good for Shakrir anyway. He needed a draw in here. So, okay, but still there was this last chance here for the Vincent, right? After e5, which was a bit inaccuracy. Yeah, rook went to f1, and here was still some chance.
Yeah, he went bishop knight c4, which was a step in the wrong direction. And then after e6, he went bishop to c8, but already the position is very difficult because rook f7 is such a nasty threat. And it goes to show that if he had started with a move like bishop to c8, stopping e6 before it happens, then he can protect his king a bit better. And what happened in the game, bishop c8, rook f7, just forced to resign, Ketty. There's no defense because queen g5, it does defend the rook, offers a queen trade. With move e7, checkmate on f8.
Oh, wow, beautiful. If we take the queen, then rook f8, and it's going to be just checkmate. On the back rank, your king is, out of the moves.
Well, we saw Hikaru do that against Oparin. Sometimes you promote to a rook.
Why not? It works. What a crazy 2 games. Not only 2 games, 4 games by Shaq and Vincent. They both played really nicely today, but Shaq played a bit better, and that's why he goes to the semifinals. And here we have the pairings. Shaq gonna face Hikaru Nakamura, who is the qualifier at the candidates tournament, and Wesley gonna play against Tsatsalashvili. It's gonna be very exciting semifinals. Although we know already those 2 Grand Prix winners who are gonna get this seat at the candidates tournament, still a lot of things are on the table. And for these players, it's just another very strong event that they are taking part in.
Yeah, I forgot who the other 2 participants would be because I was so focused on these rapid tie breaks and then eventually blitz. But Amin Tabatabai, what a performance from him. Vincent Keymer was looking to join him as a 2,600 plus player who wasn't one of the favorites to make it. Unfortunately, his tournament has come to an end. But Nakamura, Mamedyarov, So, Tabatabai, great chess is promised to be played in the rest of the way.
That is right. So this is the end of the tie breaks today. We had truly amazing games. Not too much, but amazing. And Robert, Mamedyarov made so much draws earlier in the classical chess, and he saved best for us. And now we saw a real face of Shaq, how strong he can be, how creative he can be on the chessboard. And it was really nice to witness that. And thank you so much for being here with me for this journey, and to our viewers as well on YouTube and Twitch for joining us today at the Grand Prix tiebreakers.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm glad that we were able to witness such exciting chess and to see Mamedyarov, and his pieces come to life. So, Ketty, thanks again for hosting alongside me. It's been a pleasure. And the next stage will also be fun in the knockouts.
That's right. It's time to say goodbye, guys. And we're coming back with a classical chess, but we do have final 2 games only in progress. So we need to be on our side, and see you tomorrow at the same times and at the same place. Bye.